your pitches. That's why I think most of us want to get to, and so my goal is to get to that part as soon as possible, because I think that would be the most valuable part of this. So a little bit of background on myself and why I'm here. I've been on both sides of the table as an entrepreneur and as an investor. I started off actually at a $200 million fund here in Chicago, a fund called Lightbank, investing in early stage technology companies. This was in 2008, 2009. We were deploying capital to companies all over the country, but particular focus on consumer technology companies. Lightbank's model was not only to invest in companies, but also to start companies. And so we started a company in 2011 that I ended up co-founding with a couple other people. A company called Belly ended up raising about $35 million from Andreessen Horowitz and a number of others. We grew to about 200 people, and then failed pretty miserably. Learned a lot of lessons from that, and started another company in 2017 that was acquired at the height of the pandemic. So both sides of the spectrum, success and failure as a founder, and then both sides of the table as an investor and entrepreneur. After my last company was acquired, I took a little bit of time just to think through what I wanted to do next, and always been personally passionate, curious, excited about sustainability and about finding solutions to, I think, what is the biggest challenge we face, climate change. And so just started to kind of direct some of my resources towards that, and started to think through what I wanted to do. I had known the generator team, which got its start in Madison in 2010. I was an advisor and mentor to some of the early companies that came through, and this was last summer, went to the founders and partners of Generator. I said, hey, if you ever do a sustainability focused accelerator, let me know, because I'd love to invest or advise or support those companies. And they came back a couple weeks later and said, we want to do something in that space. We think there's urgency in that. We think there's a huge opportunity in sustainability and climate tech. But we're only going to do it if you run the program. So I guess I talked myself into running the inaugural sustainability cohort accelerator at Generator. Generator, just to give a little bit of kind of background, because I think it might be helpful for everybody. We're a 10-year-old fund accelerator program. We have deployed and worked, I should say, invested and worked with over 850 startups across the country. Those companies have gone on to cumulatively raise over $1 billion in follow-on capital. 53% of those have either been acquired or raised more than $1 million. We invest across race, place, and gender. So we look at opportunities where maybe traditional accelerators or VC funds have overlooked founders due to race, place, and gender overall. We don't think that it's fair or right that 80% of VC dollars goes to 3 states, California, Massachusetts, New York, and that 97% of that goes to males who predominantly look like me and live in the Bay Area. We think there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of untapped potential in areas outside of those 3 states. And in underrepresented founders who reflect the diversity of the communities in which they come from. And I think in the climate space, and we can get into this, but those are the communities that are most impacted by the effects of climate change. And so really looking to invest in those sorts of founders and teams overall. Just to kind of wrap all of this together, we launched the inaugural Sustainability Accelerator in October of last year. So we announced it in October. We weren't sure what the reaction would be. We ended up getting closed applications on January 2nd. Ended up getting 367 applications from 200 cities in 60 countries on 6 continents. So pretty overwhelming response. It was my job to then whittle that down to the top 5. Generator's model is to only work with 5 companies at a time in each program that we run. So opposed to like a Techstars, right, which is maybe 8 or 12, or a YC, which is like, I don't know, 400, 500 at this point per cohort, we only work with the top 5. And so that allows us to be much more hands-on, involved, supportive of those companies. So we announced the 5 companies 2 weeks ago, and happy to kind of talk through what those companies look like, what we look for in evaluating those companies. And I think a lot of what we do to evaluate and look at startups are the same as what investors that you go to pitch would look for. And so happy to kind of talk through all or any of that, or get any specific questions that anybody has overall.
Yeah, thank you so much for that in-depth overview. Really appreciate it. I would love to start with way back when you were in school, actually. So, you know, we're all students right now. What were some ways that you took advantage of your institutional education when you were in university? And how did that translate to your career? What was were there any? That can be an answer too.
It's a good question. Okay.
Just help us best take advantage of our time.
Yeah. So I think what I'd say is the entrepreneurial journey. I assume everybody's in this class because you want to start a company or you're on the journey of starting a company in some way. And I think that process at the beginning is really exciting, right? You're starting something new. You're on this path of creating something that wasn't there before, solving a problem that exists in the market. And as you progress, the challenge that you'll face and that you'll find is that it's a really lonely experience. Starting a company is like, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, and you're often in it alone, or maybe with the 2 or 3 people that you're building it with. And so I think the best advice that I can give in terms of how to take advantage of that is surround yourself with the community of peers that you have that can support you on this journey. And I think I say that not necessarily because I took advantage of that, but I think it's something that you all have the opportunity to take advantage of in this like world-class school organization that you're at. The support, the resources, the advisors, the mentors that come to these, take advantage of that. Because those are the people that are going to be the biggest ambassadors, supporters of what you're building. And there's not a lot of opportunities for that outside of this in a lot of ways. And so take advantage of the resources, the support that you're getting from people like Mark and others that are involved in this, because it can be a really lonely, tiring journey overall building a company.
Absolutely. And speaking of building a company, you know, you talked about Belly, which was one of your first companies, which you said, you know, you raised several $1 million, you had 200 employees, and then you failed miserably. And we love talking about failure in the entrepreneurship space. It's one of the best learning opportunities. So you mentioned that you learned a lot of lessons. Can you kind of outline some things, some takeaways that will help you?
Oh, okay, where do we start? So first, like, I say we raised 35 million, and like, oftentimes that's seen as like, oh, that's a success story in itself. Just raising money is not a success story. Like whatever your ask is, whatever you're trying to pitch and go towards, like, it's not, the end goal is not to raise capital, right? And I think we probably we had access to capital that was, between us, probably like a little too easy for us to get, and didn't force us to think about the economics of the business in ways that supported its long-term growth overall. We raised $2 million, like, pre-seed round a couple months after we started, because we were essentially incubated at Lightbank. That was pretty easy to get. We then, 6 months after that, raised a $10 million seed round, I guess, seed or Series A, I don't remember, from Andreessen Horowitz. Pretty easy to get because we had the connections and kind of were in that network. And I think it wasn't until we had to raise our subsequent round of funding that we realized, oh shit, we need to build a real business here. And we were burning $500,000 a month. The unit economics of what we were trying to build around wasn't sustainable. And we just grew too fast. And so I think, like, if you're able to raise money quickly, that's great, right? Like more power to you. I think like absolutely, like we could talk about how frothy the climate tech kind of venture capital ecosystem is today. But I think oftentimes thinking about the actual business model, the economics that go to market, like who are your customers, who are you selling to, how are you able to get in front of them in the most cost-effective way, and then what's the LTV on that long term? Those are the things that are going to make your business. Not are you able to put together a really good pitch deck and get investment. And so I just encourage you to think through those things up front in the model, not concentrate your time, effort, energy, or 100% of that to raising dollars, because that is a huge kind of time suck overall. I'd also say that how important culture is. You're like how big are the teams? I assume nobody's bigger than like 4 or 5 people. Yeah. So like at that stage, it's really easy to control culture because it's only 4 or 5 people that really care about the company and that care about what you're doing. It really only starts to become something that you need to think about a little bit more when you're at 25, 50 people. You probably have experience doing this as well, where once you hire your 50th employee, they're not, quite frankly, like they're just not as invested in the company as like the early group of people that were there. And so setting culture and making sure that that continues to stay through the longevity of the company is a really hard thing to do, and you need to be focused on that in terms of thinking about that long term, setting the values. What is the mission? What is the guiding star that you're going after? And those things are really important early on, because it dictates who you bring on, the hires that you make, and how you build the company overall. I think we've lost sight of that in a lot of ways. And then I think I think this probably isn't a challenge for you in this space, but I think having like meaning behind what you're doing, right? Like solving a real problem that exists. And I'm not just saying like climate change as like this nebulous problem that we're solving, but like thinking about, okay, who are the customers that we're solving a problem for? And what is it that why are we starting this company? Is because of them, or because of an experience that you had all yourselves that you're now figuring out, okay, how does that translate to additional people? And keeping in mind that problem and the meaning behind why you're doing this, and allowing that to translate through the growth of the company, I think is really important. And a lot of companies lose sight of that as they grow overall. So I'm sure I could continue to go on, mistakes and failures that we made. Those are just a couple that came to mind.
Yeah, no, those are excellent takeaways. So thank you so much for sharing. But if we fast forward, so now you're at Generator, which is a startup accelerator and fund kind of duo. So you mentioned diversity, you mentioned only taking on a small number of teams, you mentioned focusing on sustainability. Is there anything else that sets you apart from any other generators or any other accelerators, even when you're branding yourself to potential teams to bring on, or anything else like that?
Yeah, so we, I mentioned, I think that like the Generator is, you think of accelerator programs, right? You're probably thinking of Techstars, you're thinking of YC, right? Nothing against those accelerator programs. They've got great brands, great mentors, great programs that they have. We do tend to do things a little bit differently at Generator. I mentioned a couple of those differentiators, but you won't find us, first of all, you won't find us in New York City, Silicon Valley, Boston, Seattle, like the major tech hubs. We think those are fairly saturated with accelerator programs, investors as is. And generally, we think that there's a lot of opportunity outside of those areas. And so really look to build coalitions, community partnerships with people outside of those core areas of focus. Again, 80% of VC dollars goes to those 3 states. We think that there's massive amount of opportunity that lays outside of that. Hence why you're all here, right? Building new companies in Chicago. And so, that's, I think, the focus. One of the focus areas is kind of around location. then looking at underrepresented founders as well, right? Those that reflect the diversity of the communities in which they come from. 67% of the founders that we invest in are underrepresented, so come from a background that isn't traditionally seen as kind of mainstream, like typically white male in the tech space. And then around gender as well, right? So 43% of our founders are female. That's against the trend of nationwide. I think it's 3% of VC funding goes to women. So we're looking to support, and I think it's not like we're not doing that because we have some like, you know, that's kind of the motto that we have. It's because we actually believe that those companies are more successful. The companies that reflect the diversity of the communities which they come from are more successful. That's just a fact. And so that's why we've returned so much money for our investors. That's why we're top quartile in terms of the accelerator programs that exist out there. We syndicate more deals with more investors than any other accelerator or any other VC out there. And a lot of that is just because we're building partnerships with communities, with organizations, with founders that typically aren't seen in terms of the prototypical sort of startup founder overall.
Well, happy International Women's Day, everyone. What a fitting speaker to have today. That is excellent, and I firmly support your mission. Maybe we can take this as an opportunity for you to outline the 5 companies that you chose to bring on this cycle and what was special about them.
Yeah. So awesome. So I think let me just to give you like a perspective on our process overall, because I think our process is similar to what you go through with the Techstars or YC or others. So we start with open applications. People submitted an application to be considered. Again, as I mentioned, for this inaugural cohort, we had over 350 submissions. We look at so a couple of core things and then a couple ancillary things. First, for the accelerator that I run, we look at first and foremost, climate impact, right? So we're actually looking, does this company exist because or due to climate change? And is it doing the most to solve, mitigate, adapt to our current environmental and climate crisis? The second thing that we look at is, does it have the opportunity to be a big business, right? Touching billions of people or generating billions of dollars in revenue. And I kind of say that tongue in cheek, but I think those things go hand in hand, right? If you're going to have an impact, a massive impact in solving this crisis that we face, you're going to be financially successful. And I think the market dynamics finally support that, and we can get into that in a lot of ways, but later parts of this conversation. But I think we're finally at a point where if you're able to help solve the crisis that we face, you're gonna make a lot of money doing so, and we're fairly unapologetic about that. And so we look for businesses that have the opportunity to be big because of the opportunity that exists. And then we look at if we kind of check the box there, we're evaluating the companies on a couple other core things. So one is team. So we're looking at founder market fit. Does that team have specific industry experience that would make them or allow them to uniquely solve this problem that they're out to solve? The second is traction. So revenue obviously is like the key metric that we look at there. Recurring revenue, obviously. In climate tech startups, oftentimes that's non-existent, and so we look at LOIs, or we look at MOUs, or we look at other areas where they may have traction, even if it's in winning certain grants or winning competitions or those sorts of things where they've identified and have executed on their mission overall. We look at market opportunity. So how big is the market that they're attacking? Are they creating a new category in that market, or just trying to make something better in that market and try to evaluate them based off of that overall? And then I think not necessarily last, but I think we look at the idea behind it, right? Like the product. what the solution is. And the only reason I say that last is because that changes, right? That changes pretty quickly in a startup as you start to talk to customers and you bring your solution to market. So we evaluate all of that, and then we have a pretty rigorous process to then identify the top 5. 350 gets whittled down to the top 100. We do first round interviews with those top 100, then 50, then 25, and then we select the 5 from there. So this year's cohort, I should have a slide on it to bring up. There's a company, so it's the thesis that we have, by the way, is, I'm probably getting into more details, but I think it's important. The thesis that we have, and I think other climate tech investors are looking at, we genuinely believe that every single industry, every sector, every business on the planet is currently being transformed by our climate crisis, and no business is going to be left unchanged. And so it only reasons that those that are helping us attack this in any industry, those are the ones that are going to be most successful overall. So we looked at energy, mobility, transportation, manufacturing. We looked at software, hardware, deep tech, ML, AI, put an acronym on it. Didn't matter as long as, again, it hit the criteria that we were looking for. So the 5 companies are attacking the problem from a number of different areas. One is a regenerative agricultural company called Carbon Yield, actually came out of Northwestern, helping farmers take advantage of carbon markets through the transition to regenerative agriculture. Another company called Blip Energy came out of this class. Mark knows the founders.
2 years ago? 2 years?
Yeah, 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah. They're providing an affordable home energy solution. So they're starting with a battery, second life battery that goes into homes that can provide resilience and help people save the world from their couch. Essentially, it's a smart battery. The third is a company out in New York City. I know there might be a company in this class that's doing this around curbside EV charging as well. So they're attacking it in the Northeast right now, going after New York City and providing curbside EV chargers. They have a different model than most in that they're working with homeowners to provide income back to homeowners who then install the charger on the curbside. We have a company called Solar Steam in Canada that is doing lowest cost renewable heat. So working with heavy industry to provide more renewable energy source for their high emitting industrial processes. And then a company called Mycocycle, which is using mushrooms to eat trash and then build renewable value streams out of that waste. So I think in terms of like the spectrum of companies, it's all over the board, right? We have one in energy, we have one in like industrial waste, we have one in industrial heat, one in EV, transportation, mobility, and one in food and ag, right? And that was on purpose to make sure that we have a really broad spectrum of companies and startups that are tackling this problem from a number of different areas.
Wow, that is an incredible cohort. Could you maybe highlight like the story behind one of those startups and maybe about their team, how they got started, what inspired you to take a chance on them?
So do they know about Blip?
They don't know about. I don't think we talked about Blip in class, did we? A little bit. Okay. Maybe you should talk about something else.
Okay. So let me just think through the, well, let me use Carbon Yield because they're another Northwestern company. Didn't go through this class, but I think just came through the university overall. So they started their company a couple of years ago. They've got deep industry. So like you look at the things that we look for, right? Their team has deep industry experience in working with farmers, right? In particular, working with farmers to transition them to more regenerative agricultural practices. And I can get into some of the reasons why we invested and how food and ag, 30 to 35, depending on who you talk to, emissions come from food and ag, and that we need to transition farmers to more regenerative practices overall. Commodity farming is essentially killing our land and sucking the lifeblood out of our communities, and I can get into soapbox about that. But they've worked over the last 10 years in that space, and so have deep industry experience in that. Started their company a couple of years ago, won a challenge, I think, with Goldman Sachs, like innovation challenge that went through, and have been working and generating revenue, working with farmers over the last couple of years in supporting their transition to more regenerative agriculture. The unique differentiation that they're having is that they're helping these farmers access these carbon markets that exist, to get them value from moving towards more regenerative practices. Currently, the way that farmers do that or move towards regenerative practices, it's costly. They don't see the revenue from that for several years until they implement these practices, and so they're helping them access, again, this emerging carbon markets that's I think growing to $200 billion. And there's a whole bunch of, we could probably get into a huge discussion, conversation around carbon markets and what goes into that, but they're really just enabling that transition. And we saw that there's a huge need, there's tailwinds that exist in this market towards these sorts of practices, towards helping farmers get revenue from these streams. And they're executing on that in terms of traction, and in terms of revenue that they've generated from that. And in terms of the overall market opportunity, we think is pretty enormous. And so I think their journey has been, they're still figuring out their model. They're still fairly early. These companies are all pre-seed or seed stage companies, and so still really figuring out what their model is going to be. But that's where we help support, right? We also look for, are these people coachable? Are we able to come in and support them on their journey to figure out what their model is? And that's, I think, what we saw in their team is that there's a huge opportunity. They've got industry experience, but giving them some direction in terms of how do they think about growth, scalability, and overall kind of go-to-market strategies where we could support them, and that's why we selected them overall. So, yeah.
Sounds like an incredible story. Love the Northwestern connection. And with that, I'd love to open it up to any of my fellow classmates who have any questions. Our lead speaker today. Yeah, Eddie in the back.
Hi, thank you again for coming to talk with us today. It's an honor. You mentioned earlier when you were talking about one of the companies you worked with in the past, the importance of not neglecting company culture once the group grows large enough. Could you talk more about that and some of the strategies that you would have implemented to help promote culture in the company when it comes to, as we, are involved in leading companies and stuff, like what kind of takeaways should we try to implement?
Yeah, look, I mean, that's a really good question, right? And I think everybody's going to have a different opinion on how to cultivate that. I think quite honestly, it starts with the founding team and really the CEO to set that. I think culture can be influenced by the people that they bring on board, certainly, but in a lot of ways it's set, and people take their cues from the CEO. And I've seen that work both really successfully and really poorly with CEOs that don't exhibit the qualities of a good leader overall, and that transcends to the rest of the company. And so I think what can help in that journey to continue to set and solidify that is upfront. Like, you have the ability to set, okay, what is the mission behind what we're doing, right? Setting that guiding star that's going to really help the company in terms of who it brings on, who it hires, what are the values that it's going to support, and revolve around that, transcends again to the people that you bring on board, and just making sure that the founding team continues to have a pulse on the people that they bring on, right? And having opportunities for feedback both ways, for continuing to support or invest in your employees in ways that allows them to have meaning in their work, and give them the tools and the resources that they need in order to thrive and succeed. And I think, sure, we could have a whole, that's probably another conversation for another time, but I think those are just a couple of things that keep in mind in terms of setting those guidelines of values, mission up front, having a good understanding of that, and then just making sure that the people that you bring on exhibit that, and that translates in every conversation, every meeting, bringing on the right investors and partners that are going to support with those sorts of things as well. Long term, I think helps.
I think it's really the job of the CEO to set that culture. And frankly, we could spend all night and we could spend an entire quarter, and some people spend an entire career trying to define organizational culture, organizational behavior. Courses in LOC, Learning and Org Change, courses in Kellogg on org behavior. This is where you'll find a lot more detail. Leadership courses, deal with this in quite extensively. So the best CEOs really got a handle on this and really set the right culture. You have time for one more question. Roberto.
Yeah, so how you guys measure the success? Like, how you guys measure the success once you guys take a company? Like, what percentage of your companies actually, I don't know, is it like for them to get to the stage of an IPO? Is it like, when do you guys like stop helping them? Is it like past Series B? And how do you measure the success?
Yeah, so we never stop helping them. So our program it lasts for 3 months. What we support within that 3 months is customer discovery. We help introduce them to partners. We meet with them twice per week. We make over 200 introductions to investors, to mentors, to supporters during that 3 months. But after the program ends, we continue to support them. We meet with them monthly, continue to make introductions to investors to support them. We're certainly looking, we have a couple metrics that we look at overall, right? We look at follow-on funding. So are we helping these companies attract additional capital? We're VCs in the end, right? So we're looking for VC returns for the companies that we invest in. So obviously follow-on capital is one. We look at job growth though and job creation. Our mission is to be the best partner for a community to invest in its best and brightest. And so want to spur entrepreneurial activity in the communities and in the sectors that we're investing in, right? So certainly we'll look at job creation overall. We'll look at the revenue that's generated from those companies. And then obviously we track them and continue to stay involved with them towards exit and IPO, right? And so that's why we say the companies that we've invested and worked with have raised over $1 billion in follow-on funding. But it's not like that's weighted towards just 3 or 4 companies. That's why we say 53% of those companies have gone on to raise over $1 million or been acquired. And so that's, if you look at traditional sort of path for a startup, it's less than 10% into that stage. And so we're a 5x increase. That's the sort of like metrics that we're looking at. And then we publicly, like if you go to generator.com/DEI, like we're publicly making available, which we wish every investor and every accelerator put out there, like our stats in terms of our staff, our cohort, our founders, our CEOs, what the makeup is of representation there, because we believe that's critical for a success of a company overall, and that's what we measure some of our metrics on overall too. Good question.
All right, thanks for the questions. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Stephanie. Nice job. Well done. Okay, on with the team presentations. Thanks again, Stephanie. Team 5, e-collect. I guess the way we're going to work it with each team is going to come and set up and basically share their screen. And each team gets 10 minutes to present, 10 minutes with Q&A. At this pace, we might or might not have a chance for a break. If we don't, just take asynchronous breaks as we go. So e-collect, if you want to get set up. While you're setting up, I'll make a few comments about what Ryan said. So what he looks for in his incubator, his accelerator, are 4 criteria. I think I got them right. Founder market fit, right? And then went to traction, you went to market opportunities, and then you went to the idea. This class had no chance to do founder market fit. Your teams were formed basically organically. We weren't here to evaluate whether you had the right people on the team. In 10 weeks, we just didn't have that luxury. So that's why you're going to have to evaluate it yourselves. Do you have the right people? The second you exit this class, who's on board, who's not on board, right? Make sure you have the right folks. traction in 10 weeks, you can't measure traction, at least not in this class, and certainly not with these topics, right? So some of these topics will take years to measure traction. However, we were somewhat obsessed with market opportunities and product market fit, the idea. So hopefully you saw some coincidence with what they were looking for and what we were looking for in the class. Yeah, do I need to stop sharing?
You got it.
We got it, okay.
We can see it, Mark.
Yeah. Interesting. Maybe what we do is we just shut down this image.
Can this stop sharing or
We,
I stop sharing?
I think you have to.
and then, we are actually currently raising a follow-on funds, to invest, $3 million fund that's committed, I think. To invest in, follow-on,
This is not me, but yeah, maybe you reset it.
so just we're investing in fund 7. What is it?
Just shut this right now, right?
Not too big, but a lot of our programs actually are
This.
like corporate sponsors.
Hold on. We can stop it, He's treating it as an extra. So at this point,
$30 million opportunity to invest in
Yeah, you can.
log into this computer.
Yeah, so equity.
And keep that.
So different programs invest in different.
Yeah, this will, yeah.
Models, some invest in.
Showing? It's not showing.
Some of the.
You done this? There we go. Jay with the save.
There you go, nice job, thank you. So there you go. We have multiple microphones here.
Yeah, kind of just. Yeah, cool.
Any questions? Okay, I'll keep time. I'll give you guys a 2-minute warning. Otherwise, you have 10 minutes, so take it away.
Okay, I just want to thank again the advisors and the guests for being here today. We appreciate that. And we'll get started. So we are Ecollect, and we're hoping to have a solution. We actually have a solution that we're very passionate about to mitigate and reduce one of the main contributors to climate change. So when we think of climate change, a lot of times what like pops up into our heads are smokestack. And what a lot of people are paying attention to is things like plastic pollution and like attacking straws with metal straws or trying to come up with more energy efficient vehicles. But one main thing that people don't consider is food waste. And food waste is actually a huge contributor to greenhouse gases. It accounts for 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions and is actually higher than the carbon footprint of the airline industry. If you were to take the carbon footprint of all the countries around the world and compare them to the carbon footprint of food waste, it's actually higher than every country in the world except for China and the United States. So it ranks 3rd in the global carbon footprints. In addition to that, a lot of restaurants and larger institutions focused on food have a lot of backlash because of how much food waste they're producing, whether that's because their customers don't eat everything or they don't buy everything, or it's just the food's scraps from actually producing the food. There is a lot of backlash. And so Ecollect sees an opportunity here because the EPA has stated that the majority of waste in landfills is actually food waste. And so that's where a solution comes in. We see 3 main opportunities here. One is to take all of that food waste and dispose of it properly. And that would significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And we would take that food waste and turn it into something that's valuable. And that's the second opportunity, which is to create nutrient-rich fertilized soil. And in that composting process, we would also capture the gases that are emitted there and produce biogas sustainably and locally, so we're no longer dependent on foreign nations for our gas supply. So there are 3 main components we can break up Ecollect into. The first is the collection of organic waste. And that mainly is just replacing the current waste management services that go to restaurants or universities or places where the waste is mainly food. And we would replace that with our collection service, and we would charge a similar subscription charge, so price per pound for the waste that we collect. And one thing that we are offering is a report for those universities or institutions, and that we would use a patented algorithm to calculate how much greenhouse gas they're saving by contributing their waste to us, and also how much energy they're producing sustainably because of that. The second part is once we have the waste, we take it to our facilities and we compost it. And that's where we get the biogas and the fertilized soil, which is the third part is of the company is just selling that. So through the composting process, we create fertilized soil, which we can give to farmers so that they can grow their products sustainably and with organic fertilizer. And then we'll also sell biogas to the grid and biogas users. And then kind of breaking that down a little bit further with an ecosystem map. If you look, I'm just gonna highlight a few things here. If you look on the left side, that's the collection portion. And that's, you can see the waste producers would give us a product, which is their food waste, and also pay us for collecting that waste for them. And then that product, if you follow the blue arrows over here, would be turned into two things, the biogas and the compost. And that's what we would sell for to get some revenue from biogas users and from farmers. And the other component of that is the purple arrow, which is the information which we would give to the waste producers.
Okay, so to break down our biogas model a little bit, as you all know, biogas has been tried before and has had other iterations, but we found a unique opportunity this time to really look at why those companies maybe didn't live up to expectations or maybe fail. And in our research, that was because of aggregated costs that, their cost of transportation, their cost of processing turned when summed together, turned an opportunity into a money sink. So through our research, what we've aimed to do is to make our plants decentralized as opposed to centralized. Quickly, what that means is that we'll be able to have leaner operations closer to the areas where we're picking up food to minimize as many of those costs as possible and maximize our margins per unit of biogas.
So based on our decentralized model, we will provide a service within a 20-mile radius of our biogas reactor. So we had two types of the target market here. So first type is the restaurant and large institution, just like university and supermarket. So we will charge the money, the food waste PR fee for this type of market. And we also have a second type of the target market, is the farmer and the biogas users. We will selling our products to this type target market. So yeah.
So our competitive advantage, I'm sure this isn't the first time that you've heard about compost or even a compost service, but we do think that we do have the competitive advantage. One reason being the data report that we offer. We would do that with our patented algorithms about intellectual property hours specific to Intellect's model. And we would provide three things. That's how much greenhouse gas emissions they prevented from going into the environment, and also the amount of biogas produced and the amount of non-organic fertilizer that they prevented from going into the environment per pound. And we would provide a really clear and concise report so that it's easy for them to publicize and show the public and create that sustainable image and that people can trust. So that would increase transparency and avoid any accusations of greenwashing. And it would also create a form of trust between their customers to know that this is a place they can trust and ethically promote or support. The other advantage is the first mover advantage. So right now, only 3% of Americans have access to a service like ours. Many services you have to go to and drop off the waste there, especially for larger organizations. There's nothing that goes to them and collects the waste for them. In terms of fertilizer, ours is sustainably produced, so we're not using any artificial chemicals, which also helps promote this for farmers because they can say their products were grown with organic fertilizer. Also, the fertilizer is in the soil already, so there's less of a chance for runoff, which is really dangerous because a lot of times the nutrients get into other parts of the environment where you would think it helps, but it's actually really harmful. And then the last component is with the production of our biogas. As you can see, a lot of times the landfills just take their waste and burn it to create biogas. and that's pretty carbon intensive. But if you look right next to that, that's the carbon intensity of food waste, which is actually ranges from 0 to a negative carbon intensity. So we have quite a great advantage there.
Moving into the total addressable market. So as we know, we have two different products. One is the biogas, second is the fertilizer. The biogas market is around 1 billion, and the fertilizer market is around 10 million. The unit economics is the most important part. As we can say, the net income we are generating is like around 0.11 cents per LP food waste collected. The food waste we are going to collect is around 250K per week. And the total revenue from that we are generating is around 1 year is like around 35 million per year. And unit margin would be around 0.18 per LP. So the revenue we would get and net income we would get is around 0.11, and the only capex which we are spending per LP is only 0.7 cents. 0.7 cents per LP. That's the efficiency of the model which we have. The cost of process. And the NPV is around 6.9 million, and IRR is 37%.
All right, so with this model, it is a fairly capital intensive process. So what we would be hoping to do is get a preliminary seed round. We consider our capex is somewhere around 4.5 million for one of these units. We'd be trying to get a certain portion of that up front, but then taking out debt immediately. With some funding up front, we would then likely be going to maybe a biogas producer, or excuse me, a biogas purchaser, somewhere alike, trying to get an LOI, MOU, going to a bank to take on the debt, so that we are not taking on large amounts of money, trying to keep some capital structure. Once we do that first one, we would ideally like to continue having that project team on, slowly scale within the first couple of years, and then ramp up as we go beyond that. That is the end of the presentation, and here are some nice little blurbs about all of this.
All right, thank you.
The floor for any questions that people have.
All right, any questions from the advisors, either online or on ground? Tim?
Go through your revenue model again. I'm not quite clear on how you get paid. A and B, what's your key technology, I guess? Where is it?
Yeah, I guess in terms of revenue, we're charging like a subscription price, so like per pound, like every pound you pick up, they have to pay a certain amount instead of like a fixed rate. In terms of protected,
So you're getting paid by the restaurant.
yes, to pick up.
Subscription fee to take out food, but then you're getting paid when you sell biogas fertilizer.
Exactly, yeah,
To customers.
yes.
How does that subscription cost compare to what they would normally pay for just landfill waste management pickup right now, if you're paying per pound rather than just per service?
Yeah, so right now what other compost services are doing is also per pound. Their prices are sometimes fixed based on like they go do an analysis, but typically it's per pound. The current waste management services also have a fixed price, but when we did like some estimations of how much waste people are producing, and it's going to be equivalent for like current waste management services. I think one thing we had was like it was 9 cents per pound, and we're charging 10 cents per pound. And then we're also providing the data report, which we would have like patented algorithm for. So that's like our technology that's exclusive to us.
And I think too, the nice thing is we break even if we're not doing subscription prices. So we can kind of, lower our price to outcompete other waste management pickup services and still be able to make money off the biogas coming in, and be able to modulate that price.
And then ideally, long-term would be getting the design and kind of the square mile, the area, having that design, being able to then easily replicate it from there would be the intention. Yeah, so theoretically, fixed costs with each unit should go down as you continue to break off I think the 20-mile square area is about the size of 2 Evanstons, give or take. So theoretically, as you modularly move throughout all these different areas, it should less costly.
So your differentiator is the information you're providing, your reports, right? Your capital is going into your bioreactor, your operating expense is going into your collection scheme. I don't see a lot of collinearity here. To try to reduce some of that, have you thought about partnering with a waste management company that will actually do the collection for you so that your operating expenses go down? You can still provide your report. You can still have your bioreactor, and you can create a different or a similar set of revenue schemes from just those pieces alone.
So I think where we have said to try and use a waste collection is given that carbon intensity differential. So your legacy waste collectors are going to have a very strong incentive to continue using their defined landfill processes right now, which they're already getting paid for almost no capital service.
I'm just saying a splintered service, so they would have a special container for the food waste, and that they would deliver that to you instead of the landfill. Right.
Sure, but especially as we move towards where landfill biogas becomes more popular, then it would be either they give it to us or they just keep it themselves. They get a tiny revenue, tinier revenue stream.
Right.
It's not as from a carbon intensity perspective.
I'm just trying to defray some of your operating expenses. They're going to be huge. For you to have your own collection scheme, effectively you're duplicating waste management. So if you piggyback, you pay them, it relieves them of their landfill, I guess, capacity needs, right? It also gives them a separate sort of revenue that, frankly, they're going to go through the same path anyways. They're going to have to do their normal collection schemes anyway. So this is all gravy to them. And then you can fuel your bioreactor, you can create your biogas, you can monetize that, you can monetize your reports. You still have a pretty decent business there without a lot of the operating expense that might otherwise go with it. And the hassles of having to buy trucks, vehicles, and that whole fleet that would have to be supported.
I think with that also, like, we were targeting places specifically where the majority of their waste is going to be food anyways. Whereas if then like the waste management services would have to like set that apart, because our sorting process is like, we do have that, but it's not as intensive as theirs where it's like, they're just burning everything they get.
Right, got it, okay.
So initially we are what we are targeting is the restaurants and the areas where they are in cohesion. So we are not have to travel much as we say in the square miles per area.
Got it, okay.
Let me ask maybe 2 questions, and they get at the same point, but feel free to separate them. So beyond just transportation logistics costs, for sure, I imagine there's a fair bit of regulatory overhead as well. I imagine the licensing to run your own waste management system with a bioreactor, as well as the transportation process for waste management, is probably intensive. So can you talk a little bit about the licensing, the regulatory environment which you'd be operating? And then the second question related to that is, as you decentralize these plants, you are effectively putting what will be perceived by many as landfills in people's backyards. Do you anticipate having problems being able to cite some of these for that decentralized model because of just community backlash?
So yes, absolutely. I think part of that square mile decision was that with that amount of area, usually there is some kind of commercial district within that footprint that we would think we'd be able to get around some of that facility siting concerns. And then from a regulatory perspective, we had definitely focused on kind of the biogas portion of the regulatory spectrum. If anyone jumps in or knows more about regulations.
I think what we saw from that, it wasn't too intensive. Like they sell, like it depends on the size, and I don't think we were getting one like for an entire the same level as a regular like biogas plant. So I didn't run into like much with that. I can also speak to like the community aspect of it. I think like one thing that we didn't mention but was like important was that this is like a special process that like we could have tours and show people like elementary schools like what the composting process looks like and how things decompose and what that can turn into. So it was kind of more so like engaging the community and making sure they like valued it instead of kind of fighting it and trying to keep it entirely a secret.
The regulation or regulatory portion is based on the size of the reactor. And since we are initially targeting, small reactors across different areas. So that's why the regulation is it's manageable.
So in future presentations, when you're doing this slide, instead of putting your degrees, you might want to put what area of specialization. So, you know, Jay, if you're working on regulation, you can talk about legal and regulation. Otherwise, as you maybe think about reforming the team, you might want to get a better mix of skills, because it seems like you got a lot of technology and engineering, not enough of the regulatory and other skills, legal skills you might need to bring this into reality. Ryan, anything?
Can you talk just a little bit about, because I think the important part of the model is how you're collecting the actual waste streams. What is your go-to-market? I know you mentioned restaurants, but I don't know that I saw that up front. Like, what is your go-to-market strategy for collecting, not in terms of logistic part of it, but like, how are you gonna sell to those customers, actually get in there and work with them? And who is your ideal profile?
Yeah, so I think we have some slides on that in the appendices. Yeah. One more thing. One more. Wait, let me see. Yeah, okay. It was mainly through our interviews. I interviewed like several restaurants. I think that was like mainly my focus. And they were all really willing to. Especially because they know like they're getting a lot of like complaints about their waste production. Also, like if pricing was relatively similar, then like why not? It made no difference to them. So a lot of the restaurants I talked to were really willing to, because it's definitely something that's on their mind with the food waste and stuff. In terms of universities and like other institutions besides restaurants, I also think like we would just market mainly focusing on how we can improve their image, and how this is something that they can show off and publicize.
So I kind of on top of that, we had earlier on there like restaurants, large institutions, and then the carbon tracking. Especially as ESG metrics become more and more involved. I think those some of the headlines that we had, it was like Chick-fil-A, like Taco Bell, like all of that. As all of that ultimately will flow into some of their reporting, having this reducing the carbon intensity of their operations, we would think would be something that they'd be interested in.
I think one of the things to focus on in future presentations too is focusing in on the problem for that customer, right? Like, what is it that you've identified that there's certainly a market for the byproducts from this, but how are you going to be tackling and going after those core customers? What are the problems that they've identified, and how are you going to help them figure that out in a lot of ways? And it could be in, like, it's not necessarily just in reducing the amount of waste, but it's in potentially supporting them on their brand, their awareness with customers. I think there's probably a lot of supportive research and analysis that you can do to showcasing why that's so important for them to go to kind of net zero waste. So just a thought.
A similar comment I have is on the fact that biogas sales is a big part of your revenue, but maybe you could speak a little bit more to just your execution strategy on that, because you're gonna be collecting gas, and that gas has to get to market through offtake or through trucking or, to a customer. So a little bit more on how you think about the actual execution of that would be important.
I think the other thing we talked about is adapting like a partnership model, which is like, working in small bits at a time with corporations, but eventually developing these relationships where we can continually sell to them over periods of time. So a big focus would be, to develop like key, envisioning the biogas chamber or industry or reactor as kind of like a center for like partnership between like the community and people we're selling to, and kind of just build up that community in a way that we're able to sell to them consistently.
But you're gonna have an operations element to this that is gonna be very important, just in terms of how you get the gas to the customer.
So it's depending on which regulatory structure, say, you're looking at the California LCFS market. A lot of the times they use mass balancing, so it doesn't have to be the exact same molecule that's making it to them, as long as it's hitting into a natural gas grid that has connectivity.
Totally understand, but you still gotta get it in the grid, right?
Yeah, exactly. You still do, so we would need a connection somewhere, local.
My other point is a lot of those revenue dollars depend on that operational skill set.
You know, I was gonna say something similar to what Ryan said. I'm gonna flip what Mark said a little bit, because I think one of the things that's really important is remember my painkiller, right? You gotta find that pain. And it didn't come out here. I know you spent a lot of time in restaurants, right? So restaurants have a pain. You really need to identify that pain. So here's the pain. And here's how we're going to solve it. I think across here. But let's assume the restaurants are the customer set with the pain. Then we really should be thinking about it is, all right, what is their pain? How do we really get closer to them and focus our technology and everything we do right on that problem and outsource everything else, like Mark said. So maybe flip it and say, we're going to outsource all this, conversion, right? Manufacturing, all of that, that's capital intensive parts. You can really build a relationship with those customers. And I would look at that as the commodity. The commodity is taking the food and converting it. If you really can do that, right? Unless you have some great technology, it's 10 times better. If you're really adding value to the restaurant, focus on that and build an execution model to really go and work with them, get to understand the problems, understand how to solve whatever that pain is. And carbon tracking, maybe just, simple disposal, I don't know, whatever it is. But, I think in the startup phase, you can't do too much. You really have to focus. You gotta find the one thing you can do 10 times better, right, than the alternative. That's what should come across here. What's the 10x thing, right, that you're so good at, right? You can solve the problem better than anybody else.
What Tim just described is what's going to make your business compelling and investable. That's where the investor starts to open up their checkbook. With that, we're going to have to cut it off. So thank you all. Nice job. Okay, team 4 is Mobi Charge, and you're next up. This last team was able to pretty much keep on track. The Q&A went about 2 or 3 minutes long, so we're going to have to make that crisper. And I'm sorry if the folks online had any questions. I didn't see any. So if you do have questions, make sure you raise your hand. And Mobi Charge is ready to go, it seems, right? Is your mic dead?
I think it's working. It's right.
Okay. All right, Mobi Charge, you've got your mic, you've got the slides, you're sharing. Take it away.
Hello, everyone. This is Mobi Charge, where we believe EV charging should be more convenient and less of a hassle to EV owners. In 3 decades, EV adoption will rapidly spike up, far outpacing the rate at which charging infrastructure is improving. And at Mobi Charge, we strive to make EV adoption easy by removing the hurdles of owning and driving an EV. And we learned about those pain points of owning an EV by talking to more than 50 current and potential EV owners, 93% of whom have identified and described at least one or more of these problems as their major concern of having an EV. And Mobi Charge addresses all of these problems by offering DC fast charging as a service that provides EV owners with fast, reliable, and safe EV charging, giving them the freedom to charge conveniently where and when they want, without having to own a garage or buy charging equipment at home. You might be wondering why not just charge at a charging station or install your own charging unit at home. Well, if Mobi Charge is all about eliminating the need to drive to a charging station, find a way to spend your time, and then drive back to home, which we call deadhead miles and a waste of time. And additionally, we spoke with busy people who expressed their extreme interest in having their cars getting charged while regularly on a regular basis while at home. And additionally, not all apartments, in fact, most apartments are not amenable to the installation of permanent EV charger at home, whether it be for lack of space or for lack of nearby power lines. We also spoke with people who live in apartment buildings that don't allow the installation of permanent EV chargers, and others who live in multi-family unit or apartments where they share an EV charger with others. So we figured our customers really want and need their cars to be charged where they are. So our focus is, as you can see, our biggest customer segment is apartment dwellers and multifamily units, where we anticipate to receive, or we anticipate steady income to come from. We also have additional customer segments. After interviewing with EV owners, we found out that the people are willing to switch or change where they go for grocery shopping or where they go to work out, which gym they go to, and where they get their haircut, provided depending on whether there's an EV charging service or not. So this is why we believe businesses and shops will be willing to partner with a service like ours, like Mobi Charge, to attract more customers. But of course, in order to achieve this and be able to serve the multiple and the various customer segments, we came up with a roadmap for our company. In the early stage, we will focus on apartment dwellers and restaurants, and also start expanding to airports, corporations with big parking lots. And we have a plan for future expansion and how we're going to maintain our competitive placement in the market, as well as some potential exit strategies. And now I'm going to turn it over to Vishnavi to tell you more about the value of our business and how we are differentiated. What is our differentiation from other competitors?
This is our value proposition. We have a subscription-based model where you can download our app and opt for the desired subscription. We will provide you service once or twice a week based on what you've chosen. You just have to book a suitable time slot for yourself, and rest of it will be taken care of by us. Earlier, we were trying to cover all of the Illinois, but then we pivoted from our target market, and now we are focusing on the suburbs Evanston, Skokie, and Maple. We will allow different days to the mentioned locations and provide our services based on the pre-booked time slots. Our key features will be that we will provide DC fast charging, which takes less than 2 hours for full charge, buying our batteries from the company Lightning Batteries and Electric Vans from the company Lightning E-Motors. We will have a warehouse where we have charging facilities for our batteries and our vans, electric vans. And we provide our service after the work hours according to the customer demand and charge our equipment for the rest of the day. We also did a competitive analysis for our competitors' Park Charge. Our major advantage is that we have a much better battery capacity. And another interesting fact is that since we are trying to electrify transportation for a cleaner future, we are making sure that we use electric vans as our transit vans, which will carry our equipment, whereas this is not the case with our competitors. Also Spark Charge has a completely different market, which is in a few cities in California. Next is that we have a record of all the pre-booked time slots that will help us have a pre-planned schedule, which will lessen the chances of us facing any unforeseen obstacles. Thus, we promise you smoother, punctual service, which will also help us not to worry about the additional services. And even if we want to compare our service with the pre-existing technology, which is, for example, ChargePoint or Tesla supercharging, our service will clearly save your time and efforts, that too within comparable costs.
Okay, so our company Mobi Charge adopts a subscription-based revenue model, and we are currently targeting EV owners of Evanston, Skokie, and Naperville. The reason to go after these three suburbs is because according to the government data, these three suburbs holds the maximum number of electric vehicles. And our total addressable market in these three suburbs are around 16,300, and we took around 20% to be our serviceable market. We have two big subscription plans. One is $40 and other one $60, with one charge per week and two charge per week respectively. So our total revenue is somewhere around $2 million US. So talking about the capital expense, we are currently planning to procure 50 batteries, and we are also in talks with development of mobile-based application for iOS and Android. And our total capital expense is somewhere around $2.5 million. Our marketing expense is around $400,000 US, in which we are focusing on marketing through billboards, malls, airports, and also promotions through EV dealers. So here in operating expense, we have covered all the wages of worker, the equipment maintenance, salaries of founders, salaries of engineers, and cost of charging our batteries, and also the office bill, which is around $3 million US. So our total expense is somewhere around $6 million US, and our customer acquisition cost is around less than $500 with a customer lifetime value of 5 years. Our predictive LTV is around $524, and the LTV by CAC ratio is somewhere around 1.05. We can surely say that it's a sustainable, and over the years will be more profitable. Next.
We asked for $7 million for our first year earning. Half of the fund will be used for operating costs, and more than 40% would be used for purchasing batteries or our vans.
At the end, our team brings a diversity of backgrounds with multiple, with expertise ranging from mechanical engineering, energy and sustainability, to information technology and engineering management. We come from 3 different countries: Jordan, China, and India. And we want to give special thanks to our advisors for their continued support and guidance throughout our journey, as well as the rest of the teams and our Professor Mark and the rest of the advising team. Thank you so much, and we're open for questions.
I could have sworn you had a picture of your truck. Could you show us what your truck looks like? I mean, it's kind of hard to imagine this sometimes, right? There you go, okay.
This is the battery, and this is the truck or the van that would carry the battery around.
So this drives up to my car once a week, plugs in for what, 15, 30 minutes, whatever it takes, right?
Easy, fast.
Yeah, and if I'm on the street, this is on the street right next to me, right?
Yes.
I'll leave it at that.
I'm just trying to understand, so 16,000 EV owners, that's very good, right? And is it 20% of those at your addressable market?
Serviceable market.
Is that what?
Is the serviceable market. Our total addressable market, yeah.
Okay, so that's, okay, so what does that mean exactly? How are they doing it today? And how is what you're doing
So,
better, right?
okay,
Okay,
so,
use my 10X example. Why is 10X better? Why are they going to switch to you?
mostly the EV owners in these suburbs have their own garages,
Okay.
which have level 1 of charging. So we'll be providing DC fast charge. That is one of the reasons they'll switch to us. Also, but other apartment dwellers, they don't have any charging unit over there. They have to travel to a charging station, say the charging station for a charge point,
okay,
or public spaces to charge their vehicles. So we will be providing their this particular service at their doorstep. So they'll switch for this reason as well.
Yeah, I just want to add to that Mobi Charge is all about encouraging EV adoption. So we really believe that there's a lot of customers or potential EV owners who currently don't have an EV. And it happened like through the interviews. It's not even a hypothetical persona. We spoke with an annual alumni who lives right on Sherman. He's from class of 2004, and he currently doesn't have an EV just because of inaccessibility of EV charging stations, and the apartment he lives in wouldn't let him install his own, even though he's able to purchase one. So we do expect the number of customers to increase in the future. This is just an approximate number to work with.
So really, the practical market though is people that don't have a home, they charge. Because even if they're on 20, they can still charge the car, right? But like longer, if they have to do something like the convenience and food. But if they have no alternative, they have to drive to the local charger. Right. That's not, it's probably, I don't know if the economics are cheaper, but it's not. So some, so it's limited, right? Because you're doing it at their location.
Yes.
They don't have to go anywhere. So that's what you're selling 50 units.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Are you mentioned charges? Can you make a distinction with the amount of so that would like kilowatt hour battery much bigger than say smaller.
So we were trying to assess different options. We currently go with a full charge once a week or twice a week, but I think we also had some numbers for a cap, a maximum number of kilowatts hour.
Do you want to see that? The capacity of a battery?
No, you don't have to go there. I was just curious. I mean, look, there's two ways, right? You can either say, I'm going to charge you or limit you on the number of kilowatts, or you can take the buffet. It's like it's 95 for the buffet. You may have a small portion this big, but you may go back to a lot of times. Somehow it all balances out and makes money, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to incorporate into our plan. So instead of having two fixed plans of 40, 60, we can fix the number of charges per week, but we can also have more plans into that, depending on the amount of charge that you get or receive per charge. So that's a good, more flexibility into our plans to incorporate, I guess.
Can I ask a related question about
Yes.
cost? So I'm doing back of the math envelope. So you own an EV, so correct me if my head is in the wrong place. And I, by the way, am a potential EV owner that lives in Skokie. So this is very interesting to me, although I have my own garage. So at $40 for one charge a week, let's say I drive 300 miles on a charge a week, give or take, whether or not that's the right size for a battery, but that's 13 cents per mile driven, which if I say I should get 25 miles per gallon out of my normal ICE vehicle, that's like $3.50 per gallon of gas equivalent for an electric vehicle. I'm just looking at DOE and energy.gov estimates that say that a current EV should be 3 or 4 cents per mile instead of 13. So is a customer really going to pay the same amount as they would for gas for the convenience of your service? Is it too expensive right now? And have customers said that they would pay that amount just to have access to these?
Gas last month or gas next month?
Fair enough. Next week.
Well, tomorrow.
Depends how many cars they hold. If you have one EV or one or gasoline, that's no problem. If you own an EV, you have no choice.
We're also comparing our pricing model to charge point at Tesla. We're focusing on the cost of regular EV, our service. So we didn't compare it with ICE. We're just assuming and hoping that people will turn to EV.
How does ChargePoint and Tesla do it? What would it cost me? What would the convenience cost me to drive to a ChargePoint station and charge?
How does it compare? So per charge, our model is almost $10 per charge. I think for Tesla, at least you have to drive there and it's around 11.
15 to 20.
Between 15 and 20.
It's 34 cents a kilowatt hour.
34 cents per kilowatt.
34 cents is the typical transaction rate, whether it's Electrify America or Tesla.
So that's our comparison, and we're just hoping that the adoption will just spike up in the future, no matter whether it's like attractive or not for people.
The reason Tesla and EA can get away with it is because they're charging you so much faster than your wall socket or a level 2 charger. Okay, I mean a lot faster, right? So you're paying for that convenience. Here, they're paying for an additional convenience of bringing the DC fast charging to your home. You don't even need to get out of bed, right? Is that what you're saying? That effectively, as long as the charge door is open, they can plug in, you can charge, you stay in bed, don't worry about it. By the time you wake up, it's charged, right? Which is well beyond what Tesla does or EA. So why not charge more?
Going the wrong direction.
Yeah, you were going.
There you go, baby.
I'm with you. I mean, I think it's expensive, right? Again, your convenience, but is it worth the equivalent of an ICE? Probably not. It's got to be, I mean, Mark, you got me in the variable rate pricing.
What right way to go, right? I saved you a ton of
I
money.
pay less for electricity in my home with a car than I do without a car.
But you're not buying my argument about concierge here, right? I mean, these guys, it's like, what's the difference between delivery pizza and frozen pizza, right?
Yeah.
You pay a lot more for the delivery because you don't want to have to open up the oven and do all this stuff. It comes to you and it's cooked and it's delicious, right? That's what you're doing. You're delivering it to the home. Now, maybe this isn't for everybody, but how many choices do you have if you live in an apartment?
Speaking of pizza, there's like a lot of pizza shops and people still deliver it and like request it for delivery. So just because there are charging stations down the street or wherever it is, people are going to request charge delivered to their house.
But you can't make your own too.
No, I agree, but I'm looking at this saying, well, I think there's a market. My first reaction, I think it's a very small market that's going to pay that amount of money, right? And then I say, well, okay, how do you expand the market? No way to expand the market is with the cost down, right? So how do you do it? I think it's scale, but it seems like a very limited market.
I talked to my wife yesterday about my daughter's car and how much it's going to cost now with gasoline. It's easily going to be between $100 and $200 a month to pump gasoline into this beast of hers. Okay, it's literally getting 20 miles per gallon. It's a relatively new car. You're talking $40 to $60, and even if you get 2 deliveries a week, that's 80, maybe even not even more than 100, right? So it's half the price.
Always the full charge. And you get like a full charge.
Yeah, it's so I mean, unless gasoline plummets, which it might happen, but I doubt it. The way things are going, this is still a fantastic deal, right? I don't mean to defend you. I should be attacked.
Well, you got 3. I want to give some virtual love. You got 3 people that raised hands online.
Oh.
I just want to make sure that they have a chance to.
Yeah, this is Anne-Marie. I think it's a valid point to look at the unit economics because, I mean, you do have to get the cost down, and I don't know if you actually factored in the cost of your vehicle into the capital cost, but if you could do multiple charges simultaneously, then you would get your unit economics down because you would have one person charging multiple cars. And I think that's ultimately what you have to get to.
Right, awesome feedback. Actually, like that would be awesome to achieve, but currently the battery is very heavy, like it's very big and it's like 3,700 pounds. And that makes it hard for like to drop off the battery and come back later to it.
If you segment that truck into a series of trailers, you could take one trailer, seriously, leave it in place for 30 minutes while it's charging, go to the next one, leave that trailer in place, go to the next one. And then in essence, you're dropping off trailers, plugging them in, and then picking them up later.
Right, some
Good
kind of
idea.
round robin so that you can get the entire apartment building in a 2-hour time frame or however many people are there. I think that would help your unit economics to get the cost down for the users and probably drive up adoption. And then I would also look at areas where there's more, you got Skokie, Evanston and Naperville. Those areas are not really close to it. Evanston and Skokie are kind of close, but Naperville's kind of far. Why didn't you consider Chicago?
That's a valid point. I mean, the reason why we wanted to target Naperville was the highest number of EV owners in entire state of Illinois resides in Naperville. Okay. That's the reason we wanted to go after that. And that is, another reason we are trying to get a warehouse somewhere in between these three places. And we found a warehouse that was somewhere around 8,000 square feet, and they were charging around $10,000 for a month. So we have figured out that in our unit economics as well.
Okay. And also just to answer your previous question, the cost of the vans and the batteries were combined in one row because we are supplying both from the same company. I think it's a good idea to separate them just to be clear in the unit economics. And yes, it's an awesome idea that we would be simultaneously charging more than one car. And also, but speaking of the company, they do have a trailer option. Basically, instead of a van, you have a pickup that basically like pulls a trailer in the back, which gives us the option of dropping off this heavy battery and come back later to it.
Okay.
I think it solves a little bit of the parking problem maybe too. So any other questions online?
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick.
Go ahead, Ian.
So two-part question. One, I see that this vehicle, this battery on wheels, is already commercially available. So the two-part question would be, A, what's stopping somebody else from just buying these units and doing literally the exact same thing that you're doing? And C, so the whole business model is predicated on there not being conveniently located electric vehicle charging stations. However, you've also pointed out that EV vehicle adoption is going to be accelerating at an exponential pace. It's safe to assume that at some point in the relatively near future, we're going to be inundated with these charging stations all over the place. What's stopping that from just coming in and destroying your moat around your business model?
Okay. Any comments?
Yeah. So you asked why, as this particular company is already there in the market, and why no other company is coming up with this particular product. So just to answer that question, there is a company called Spark Charge. So they brought up their own product, which is not as heavy as this, but they are, they have smaller batteries of 100 pounds. They are stacking it up to 5 or 6 batteries so that they could provide DC fast charge. And I believe the reason why no one is coming after this particular battery on wheels idea is because it's a bit expensive. If you see Spark Charge, their particular battery costs around $20,000, whereas this would probably go for 50,000, in excess of 50,000. So that that may be one of the answers for this thing.
But anyone with the capital can just go after you guys. If they have more capital than you, they can easily overwhelm you, right? So I think Ian's point is you need a competitive differentiator, some sort of patent, some sort of value add beyond buying somebody's battery and plugging it into somebody else's car.
Well, I think like we can improve in our product by investing in like the design of our battery, finding a more compact, lighter weight battery, just keeping improving on our product, finding a way to drop it off securely, and like pick it up, and keep improving in our service will give us a better advantage in the market.
Also, I think Ian mentioned that when there are going to be a lot of charging stations, why will people still opt for this service? Is that right?
Which we don't know about it.
So even if there are a lot of charging stations, the wait time will still remain the same. So I think people can prefer this over longer waiting hours, even at the charging stations. So.
Right. Okay, sounds good. I think we're out of time. So thank you guys. Nice job. Well done.
Thank you.
3 is next, Creditas. Thanks to you folks online, some really good questions. I think Ian, your hand is still up. You might want to drop it. Did I say it right? Creditas?
Creditas.
Creditas. Creditas. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Like tortillas or something. Creditas.
Exactly. That's actually inspiration.
Creditas. Okay. All right. You guys have 10 minutes, so take it away.
All right. First of all, thank you everybody for being out here tonight with us. Special thank you to Ryan, who's not in the room right now, and of course, all of the advisors who've helped us along the way, and all of the other beautiful teams that we've had satisfaction of sharing the classroom with. So pretty excited about it. Without further ado, this is Creditas.
Can you imagine in the world nearly 30% of Can you imagine in the world nearly 30% of anthropogenic greenhouse gas emission is due to methane, and also how our majority ruminant animals that release methane due to their enteric fermentation. And for all the methane released in the US, 67% of them is due to the enteric fermentation. So we see that there is a big problem that we can solve. And due to our research that we found, just adding 30% of the supplement into a cow feed, that we can reduce the methane released by cows up to 98%.
Yeah, so just imagine a guilt-free, carbon-neutral burger. As he just mentioned, that is an absolute possibility if we use supplements, feed supplements. But we saw that the feed supplement prices are super expensive, and we realized that there is a market for us here to jump in and bring in carbon credits. So we at Creditas propose free supplements and along with the added benefits of carbon credits for our local farmers. At Creditas, we really care about helping our local farmers who are increasingly pressured by the mandates that are released for reducing methane emissions by their cattle. I will let Sean talk to you about Mr. Jonathan Doe to explain more.
No, it's. Okay, so I'd like to introduce Mr. Jonathan here. He's from California in a very popular cow dairy farming area. He has about 250 cows. And obviously, if you know anything about farming and dairy, he struggles a lot. He is dealing with inflation, increasing feed prices, and milk prices are just not keeping up with that year to year. So he has to put food on his table, and since 2003, about 50% of the dairy farms in the United States have disappeared. And mostly small dairy farms, ones that we might be targeting, are drastically disappearing. There are labor problems. No one wants to work out in the country. Changing consumer demands, and the changing climate. Even when the temperatures get extremely hot, cows get more sensitive and reproduce less, create less dairy, and Jonathan Doe is more and more experiencing the pressure in this market, and he is thinking about leaving this market. All that Jonathan Doe cares about is the well-being of his cows and making that profit margin. And no better than increasing the well-being of his cows, we are offering a free supplement. This supplement has various health benefits to the cow, depending on which one we use, including more vitamins, minerals, and adding increased conversion of feed energy to muscle mass, which will be saving roughly $40 to $70 per cow, depending on the supplement, for Jonathan Doe. So this is a pretty incredible deal. And especially if a farmer wants to be more environmentally conscious, appeal to his new consumers, and keep up with customer and governmental pressure, this is a win-win. And we are the solution, the middleman with the expertise of connecting these supplements with carbon credits and helping farmers and net zero companies achieve all of their recent climate initiatives.
Yeah, so in terms of our beachhead market, we're going to be looking first at California's dairy market. It is the largest in the nation, and the more John Does there are, the more impact we can make. It's got 1.7 million dairy cows and a worth of over $7.5 billion. And the other good thing about California's dairy market is that although this is a trend that's occurring across the country, consolidation of dairy farm size is occurring at a rapid pace. So although the average dairy farm right now has around 250 cows, there are 2,000 farms with over 1,000 cows in California alone. According to our techno-economic model, we found that focusing on farms with an average of 1,000 cows reduced the break-even point of our carbon credit, the break-even carbon credit point by 28%. Additionally, both the politics and the cultural atmosphere of California are unique in their progressiveness. SB 32 was passed, making it unique in its standalone in the sense that it is the only legislation that mandates mitigation of greenhouse gas across industry at a statewide level. And they have aggressive pushes for carbon neutral by 2045. The other important market that we're looking at here is the carbon credit market. Our entire business model is hedged on the growth within the carbon credit market. And that's something that seems like it's very much going to occur. The present picture looks good. 32% of S&P companies have climate pledges right now, and that's climbing by the week. Voluntary carbon credit transactions hit $1 billion in 2021, which is a compound annual growth rate of over 49% from 2019. So it's increasing rapidly in its intensity and its need. Looking forward, we're expecting these increases this growth to increase, with demand expected to increase 15-fold by 2030 and 100 times by 2050, setting the market at an estimated value of $50 billion by 2030.
So we actually did a pretty extensive market research. We spoke to a lot of supplement companies. We spoke to a company called Zell, which manufactures masks actually for cattle, and a lot of carbon credit companies. What we found out was none of them do specifically what we do, which is focus on both indirect methane emission reduction and provide carbon credits for the farmers. So we think we have a unique opportunity in this market. And also, we really think this is something that the farmers are looking for. They do not really have the time or the resources to do this themselves. And the carbon credit companies and the supplement companies are focused elsewhere. So, yeah.
Okay, looking at basic profitability and costs. So these would be the main costs that we're dealing with here. Purchasing supplements for every single cow and farmer is about 94% of our costs. So once we can prove that we are a valuable company, we can start lowering that, and maybe they will pay a little bit of that, and then we become drastically more profitable. and then verification and validation. And obviously, this is a pretty key factoid, is that we're profitable by year one. And since a lot of what we're dealing with is based on uncertainty, whether we can get farms, whether we can get cows, whether we can make deals with certain companies, the most sensitive to our analysis is the number of farms we get. So we're going to focus on getting those cows, and that will increase our profitability. Oh, and this would be our team. You can see we have a vast range of backgrounds.
And for our project, we only need $250,000 to initiate. And the cost will mainly used for the farmer acquisition and validation and verification of carbon credit, and the supplement that we will provide for farmers for free. And this is just for the first year's operation. And after that, we will be profitable every year. And based on what we get, we can continue to fund ourselves and move forward. And thank you for your listening. Feel free to ask any questions.
Any questions from the advisor?
Yes, so net zero companies need carbon credits. They need to meet their climate pledges. They would be paying for these carbon credits, but they would buy directly from us. Then we would be selling those carbon, we would be creating those carbon credits from the projects we sell.
You get the carbon credits, you're in charge, they get supplements and the benefits that are associated with those supplements.
Can you talk a little bit more about what your business model is in terms of how much you're selling those credits for? And you're building a double-sided marketplace here. On the front end, you need to onboard farmers. And I'm trying to understand a little bit more what the incentive is for them. Are they sharing in the revenue streams from the carbon credits that you're going to be offloading and selling on the back end? And how are you then, double question is then, how are you verifying or going about verifying the credits exist? And again, how much are you selling those for?
Yeah. Yes, so if we go back to the farmer slide, they, in one of the bullet points, they're saving about $40 to $70 per cow, just because what we're offering them is something that's reducing methane emissions with a cow, that's added energy back into the cow, that's less feed that you have to pay to feed your cow. Feed is about 40 to 50% of a farmer's cost analysis. So that's a pretty, and various health benefits if we start using algae, especially some citric supplements. And your second question was how we're like double counting or verifying these. We're using a lot of, some of our costs are through verifications and validations. We're going to be using methodology that already exists on the Vera website, and as well as we're going to be paying a verifier to verify that we are indeed creating those carbon credits, and the carbon credits we're selling them for $56, which is in reference to a carbon credit that is being sold in Europe for $80, and since it's about 30% greater to sell in Europe.
Yeah, I think that to elucidate, looking at, I think that to look at us as kind of the connectors in this market is the best way of approaching it, because like essentially what we're doing is we're creating an environment in which the farmer has absolutely no, there are no negative sides to the farmer getting involved with the project. We are taking all of the work, we're taking all of the upfront costs, and although we're not providing them with the carbon credits, the benefits from the actual carbon credits, like you said when you were talking about the business that's in your profile, the difficulty within that is that it doesn't come for a long time. So we're giving away the free supplements that have benefits that include somewhere around a $50 to $70 per cow per year range, which in a market with razor thin profit margins is pretty legitimate. So what we're doing is trying to, we're raising the upfront costs and then benefiting in the future from it while we continue to kind of help this industry that's the backbone of the American economy.
Are farmers currently paying for the supplement right now? Have you done analysis on?
There aren't many, first of all, there aren't many supplements being sold to farmers, but yes, every yeah, these supplements, Nutrol is selling it and then getting carbon credits. And then I'm pretty sure the farmer pays for the supplement, but then gets a little bit of the carbon credits. It's pretty much the same thing. It's just.
Is there a motivation for them to do this now? The farmers, why would the farmers buy the supplements today? Are they getting the carbon credits themselves directly?
No, so the benefits to the farmer come from the benefits of the supplement.
I mean, today, are they buying the supplement? And
No, this is an extremely nascent technology. I mean,
so it's still in its infancy.
Farmers that are buying the supplement, they are looking at like health benefits, and algae is like beneficial for like nutrient absorption and stuff like that. So that's
health benefits to the cow or health benefits to the humans?
to the cow.
Okay, all right.
So that's kind of what these companies are trying to
health
sell.
benefits, increased productivity, increased quality of milk, increases
Yeah.
the somatic cell count in milk, which is one of the most high, like the way that you can quantify quality within the dairy industry. So
Yeah, also they're selling
benefits.
the milk at a premium, like that's also like an industry that's opening up.
So if they're buying the supplements now, right, and you guys are a connector, who are you, I mean, why do they need you? I don't see why they would have a need for you. They can get the carbon credits directly, couldn't they?
So they're not buying the supplements. There's no cost
Oh, I
whatsoever at all for being part. The upfront cost of the farmer for being part of this long-term project is nothing. We are stomaching all of the upfront costs, and then we're doing the work to connect them with the verifiers and to connect then those when they get the carbon credits with the actual companies, but then we're benefiting from the long-term 3 to 5 year carbon credit benefit that they're getting while they're benefiting throughout from. So it's although you're right, I mean, a valid question would be if there was the infrastructure for it, why wouldn't they just benefit from the carbon credits?
Right.
But because the voluntary carbon credit market right now is so nascent, and it's very difficult for farmers, whether they be in California or Wisconsin, to gain access to that. What we're giving them is an opportunity to profit at this given moment in an economy that has been very difficult for dairy farmers. So
Abhishek Jain has a question for you.
Yeah, it's a two-part question, and I think it's a very interesting thing. So first part is from a technology perspective, how effective are this supplement in actually reducing these greenhouse emissions? And the second part is, even if it's true and effective, but if you look at the recent experience with the anti-COVID vaccine and the hesitancy about that, will that spill into it because probably the demographics are not too far apart?
Those are great questions. So there's a wide range of supplements that are being used right now, ranging from like 5% effective to like 98% effective. Ones that are already in cows right now are done through like a citric kind of supplement, and there's another one that it's very similar, garlic related. But they're about 30, a lot of the ones on the market right now are about 30% effective. Algae, which a lot of companies are focusing on, is going to be at like 90, 98%, 80% effective, which is massive. In regards to your second question, hesitancy. So farmers, we've spoken to a few farmers. One farmer is already using algae right now. That's just because there's added health benefits like vitamins, minerals, but this is not the type of algae that they were thinking of. But once farmers start seeing that other farmers are using them, and then it's backed by certain dairy industries, and they're trying to reduce, and they are going to be starting to mandate farmers to reduce their methane, they have no other option. And there are multiple schools, UC Davis, multiple studies that are saying like this is all very effective, this works. So they won't be trusting us. That's part of our business model. We're going to be looking at feed producers that will be selling this for us. We'll be using schools, research that backs us up. There's a lot of information out there that backs us up. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Jeff's got a question.
So you're upfront providing supplement costs. How long does validation and verification take? And how do you make up that time gap in terms of receiving revenue I imagine once you get it started, revenue can help supplement, but what do you do at the beginning when there's that gap in time?
Yeah, so I guess the first year we kind of just average everything out so that we expect to take a little bit of time to start gathering farmers, gathering to our project. Validation takes about 4 to 6 weeks, roughly, just a lot of paperwork. And then verification just takes a site visit, and then they do some paperwork. Another few weeks. I think in total it's supposed to be like 2-3 months, 1 month, something like that. But that's a lot of time for us to sort of keep reaching out. Like there's never a point in which we stop reaching out to farmers, so we just keep kind of building on progress and connections, and like our momentum will only increase as we keep reaching out to people.
And again, as these pressures continue to rise from a variety of different angles, and like as from a consumer perspective as well, the dairy industry has a much larger greenhouse gas impact than the vast majority of supply chains, and we see in California in particular, but from a nationwide and global perspective, now there's some 65% of all consumers say that they consider the environmental impact when they're making decisions. And of course, only a fraction of this, at least right now, is being translated into consumption decisions, but that's going to have to change. It might not be today and it might not be tomorrow, but it will change. And as it continues to change, both from a regulatory perspective and from just a stakeholder pressure perspective, there's going to be a higher need for lower methane, lower greenhouse gas emission dairy products. And we see ourselves as kind of trailblazers in a way, kind of helping accelerate both this trend and kind of preparing the dairy market for the inevitable.
Mark Johnson's got his hand up.
Mark Johnson?
Thanks. Yeah, Mark, and great job, team. One thing that your ask is $250,000, and the California Air Resources Board alone would be able to fund you for this, because this is squarely one of their, one of their target areas. The other thing that I forgot to mention for all of the teams presenting is the $1.2 trillion Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act appropriated cash that is grant money that'll go through state energy offices that are available for all of these projects. So keep that in mind as you build your budgets and if you continue pursuing your projects.
Could you just send us the name of that first resource?
I guess I would ask all the advisors if they want to send me some notes, I can collate them for the teams and pass it on to the teams. Otherwise, there is a survey link for each team that you evaluate that I put in the meeting announcement or meeting invitation. So it's a Google form. You can fill that out for each team or send me an email either way. We are out of time, so I have to thank this team. And let's maybe take a quick 6-minute break, come back by 8:10.
Thank you, Professor Henderson and Deputy Liddy's not here at the moment. You would not have done Thanks to all the advisors as well.
All right, thank you. So as Butler comes up next, we will take a 5 or 6 minute break, let them set up, okay? And get back here by 8:10.
Good job.
You guys here every Tuesday night then?
Yes.
Wow.
I can't even remember how long. Oh my gosh.
Drinks in time?
It's definitely one of those.
I got a big sandwich.
Because it's
everyone, I'm sorry, but I'm happy.
Really?
Yeah, all right. I grew up with Memorial. A couple blocks away. Yeah.
I have most of my finals. And then
like 3.5-hour ride on a good day. I went to
yeah, that's like really interesting. I hadn't thought about this.
I was like, Verona started,
okay. I would love to see something in like regulatory. Oh, yeah.
They put it
So Mark, are you able to see the room pretty well from this location?
Yeah, no, I can see everybody, Mark.
Good, perfect, including the presenters, right?
Oh, yeah, and the PowerPoints are perfect. Yeah, everything is perfect.
One of these
You really
days-
have done a wonderful job.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Thank you. One of these days we got to get you out here.
I know it. I'm actually coming to Chicago for Easter, so I'll see you then.
Well, let's set up a time. We can have you do some, maybe office hours with the students.
Yeah, no, that'd be a great idea.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You
Just
did
let me
a
know the
super
dates.
job.
Let me know the dates and we'll put it on the calendar.
Yep, there's a lot of work you've done.
The projects are just busting out of the seams, right?
They are, and it just occurred to me that there's funding. I forgot. So I'll send you an email.
Yeah, send me an email because I think you're fading in and out. So, okay, thanks.
Let's get back together, guys. Hey, Butler, you want to get up here? Let's get started. I want to try to keep us on time so we can get out of here by 9 o'clock.
I'll take one and then I'll take
Okay, the goal is to get out of here by 9. I think we're on track for that. So Butler,
Is it just the two of you? Is your whole team coming up?
Just us.
Just us? All right, guys, we're gonna start with Butler. You guys have 10 minutes. Take it away.
Listen up, guys.
All right. Thanks, everyone. My name is Sydney Fitch, and this is Colonel Azaria, and we are two of the co-founders of Butler. We are our team of 6. All right. If you like money, raise your hand. If you think that CEOs, CFOs, COOs like money and like saving money, raise your hand. If you have heard companies pledging to transition to net zero, raise your hand. Yes, exactly. So every single day in the news, headlines like these are popping up, and every single day more companies are transitioning to net zero and making climate pledges. So the problem is, how do all these companies actually get there? And how do all of these companies get there when there's management that loves to save money and wants to hit these targets but not break the bank by doing so? And that's where our solution comes in, and we're Butler. We're an energy management system that uses automation and AI to switch small machines off and help companies save money when they're not in use.
Thank you, Sydney. So did you know that even after you turn your electrical appliances off, or even after you turn them to sleep mode, they're still actually consuming electrical power? So this is what we refer to as vampire energy. In fact, studies show that 20% of energy is actually wasted because of these vampires. So what are we doing to solve this problem? Well, the most common solution right now is by using smart plugs. Well, and smart plugs have been around for some time now, and I'm pretty sure maybe some of you even have one at home. What they could do is they could automate or they could schedule and monitor your energy consumption, and in turn, you could significantly reduce your vampire energy usage. So how are we different? How are Butler smart plugs different? And the answer to this is automation. So by using AI or artificial intelligence, we could manage the energy consumption of our users by analyzing their behavioral data and their energy consumption data. We could fully control the whole on and off process of their electrical appliances. So people no longer need to worry about forgetting to turn certain appliances off, or forgetting to, or in fact, we're going to eliminate the whole need of human interaction with these smart plugs. And we'll also have some additional features for our smart plugs, such as energy monitoring, productivity monitoring, which is really useful for places that have employees, carbon impact tracker, and weight-based portal or app. So people who use our plugs, people who use our products, will be saving a lot of energy and money. And this is especially true for places that has a lot of electrical appliances, such as offices and institutions.
And so how do we take what Colonel is describing and actually realize energy savings? And it's through processes that will look like this. So for example, one computer, depending on how old the computer is, on sleep mode still uses 5 watts. That's that vampire job that Colonel was describing. With our system and with Butler, we can drop that down to 0 watts, which in turn is about $2.50 of savings per year per computer. Same process could go for a kitchen in an office. So you can realize it about $5.50 per year per kitchen. So at base level, you're like $2.50, $5.50. That doesn't seem like a lot. Like how can we make the savings worth it? And that's when we want you to think about what $2.50 really means at a big scale. And that's why our target market is companies that have a minimum of 2,000 employees and all the way up to companies that have at least 10,000 employees. And that's where we start to see actual savings. So for example, for a company with 2,000 employees, we can expect to see about $8,500 in annual savings. And that for companies that are bigger, we can expect to jump up to $42,500 in annual savings. You can see that no matter where the project size is, how big the company is, all of our projects have a return on investment for our clients within about 36 months. So in North America, we total energy management system has a market of $3 billion. Butler has the opportunity to penetrate about $30 million of that market, and that's after targeting smaller cities, specifically targeting Chicago first, and then moving to both the West and East Coast after that. And going a little bit further into who our clients are, they are going to be companies in the United States with high electricity rates or cities that offer energy efficiency incentives. So taking Chicago and Illinois for an example, ComEd has a really robust energy efficiency incentive program. Clients can use that to help offset the costs of our setup fees. They are companies that have over $30 million in revenue, have that minimum employee count of 2,000. There's an average monitor per employee ratio of 1.3. They are office spaces of 50,000 square feet and above. They have hours of operation that do not exceed 12 hours a day. And the reason for this is specifically, we help our clients realize savings when all of those machines are not in use, so therefore they have to leave the office, so we can help turn those machines off. And last, they have to be the more environmentally driven, those companies that we mentioned in the beginning that have those net zero targets, who want to see carbon reductions. These will be our target market. So diving in even deeper in Chicago, where we start and launch, these are 5 examples of who we see as the best clients and that Butler would serve most families to. So they're the Ernst & Youngs, Medlines, Deloitte's, the VPs of the world that we will be targeting.
Okay, now let's get down to business. So we will be using a subscription-based business model with an initial setup fee. The subscription fees and the initial fees will be tier-based in accordance to the size of the companies, as well as the approximate number of plugs that they will be using. And they will be able to see their savings by the first month. In fact, annually, they will be reducing 80% of their vampire energy, well, which is also a minimum of $2,000 in carbon offsetting, which is a lot. And it might seem like a heavy, capital-heavy investment at first for our customers, but in the long run, they will actually be making profit. They will actually be breaking even just below 3 years. So we also interviewed people, we interviewed experts and manufacturers. We'll be able to produce these plugs and ship them with the cost of $2.50 each, $50,000 for the tech development cost. And overall, we'll be starting making profit in just over 3 years. Our future roadmap for this product is, right now, we're still waiting for funds to produce this, to develop this product. And in the future, we plan to first sell in Illinois, in companies in Chicago in particular. And we plan to expand to the big cities in the East Coast and the West Coast. And finally, ultimately, what our main goal is to sell our product to the residential markets. So here's our ask. Our ask is for $250,000 of seed funding for 10% of ownership. We will be using this money for tech development, the product development, marketing, and ultimately release our pilot product.
And not only is the investment in return for 10% ownership in our company, but it's also an opportunity to invest in a growing market where people want to reduce their carbon footprint and also help these companies hit these net zero goals instead of continuously greenwashing. It's also an opportunity to invest in a technology that has multiple applications. So as Colonel said, we will be expanding target market right now, our giant industrial offices, but they can also be, the system can also be applicable to labs, universities. The market continues to grow with the development of our software. And then last, the opportunity is also that these funds will have an impact on the energy revolution of the future. The trends are going towards net zero, and your dollars will help us get there through the investment of Butler. This is our team, and we are happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thanks.
Okay, any questions from the advisors?
So here are our teammates. They will be helping us with these questions as well.
I don't know if I know enough to ask the question, but you're talking about a plug-based model, right?
Sorry?
your business model is with a plug, right? That means there's a plug in every outlet, or there's a.
It would be a smart plug with the combination of the software.
Did your research uncover, again, I'm not sure I'm smart enough to know this, but as we get more into advanced networks and other technologies, the building itself could actually provide some of the capabilities you're talking about, or the company could go out and buy it on a network type basis. What has your research shown about where this ability to save energy, save vampire load is going on kind of that macro basis that could make your plug more of a, you know, if I buy by the case, why would I buy by the drink, right?
Absolutely, and I think the huge differentiator between what you're describing and what we're describing is that that is not catered, that is only catered to building specific. So you have the ability to schedule, but you don't have the ability to customize. So one of the trends that we are seeing is hybrid workplace, that, you know, maybe a third of the office comes in Monday, a third comes in Tuesday, a third comes in Wednesday. So that entire section of the office, none of those appliances potentially need to be running on a building automation system. No matter what, at 7 a.m. every day, the whole building will light up. But with our software, what we can do is customize that 1/3 doesn't actually have to be using if no one's utilizing it. And our AI technology would have those learnings. So let's say, you know, it learns our traffic patterns that I'm late every single day for 30 minutes. The AI is going to take 30 more minutes to launch the computers or whatever appliances we need.
And you don't see building automation headed toward the ability to do what you're talking about?
Maybe eventually, but I think that we have to retrofit a building or potentially build and brand new circuits in order for that.
According to our research, there are currently building owners or company, building owners that are even looking into this particular problem.
Could a company do it if I had 10 floors in a skyscraper? Could I do this on my own without your plugs and on a network macro basis?
There's nothing right now that incorporates automation specifically. So you can do it through scheduling and overarching EMS building automation, but nothing that would do it automatically that does not depend on the user's scheduling or manually doing that.
Thank you.
I mean, a lot of admin, that's fine. A lot of building administrations, they're doing it, but not in the scale that we are envisioning. There are a lot of manual intervention is there, not the technology that you're saying is implemented, at least to the many offices that we interviewed or research. So we believe that there is a huge beachhead for us here, because not a lot has been done in this area. I know the potential is immense, like what you said. The same objective could be achieved in different ways, but what we are suggesting here is a very streamlined and simple and out there solution. I think all these office space can benefit a lot from that.
And your plugs are networked, right, to each other, or are they? Yeah.
Correct, and we chose to actually use Zigbee in fear that the Wi-Fi might have some security issues to at least speak it.
On your revenue model, did you spend any time talking to ComEd or any utilities about energy efficiency analysis and using that exclusively instead of charging the customers relying on energy efficiency budgets?
Yeah, so the program right now that I think we would qualify for without going the custom route is the 9 cents per watt controlled, which would be like the advanced building control system. So it wouldn't necessarily take money off directly from each plug, because we'd have to be able to figure out how much we're controlling, but we would be able to apply for the incentives in that for that route. So it would be more of a reduction off of the client total cost, depending on how many.
Got it. Bigger lower that payback time.
Correct,
So-
and all of the paybacks that we calculated did not include any of the incentive funding.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge that I think you'd have is that payback period of 3 years is a lot for companies to stomach, especially, elephant in the room. Like, what is the back to the office plan? How many people are actually going to be going back? What does that look like? And the uncertainty that exists in the market. And so figuring out every way that you can to reduce or to align those incentives up front for a company to adopt it early on without that huge upfront capital cost, I think is going to be really important for you to figure out.
I think Ryan's right. I think 1 year is really, what companies want to see 3 years is stretch.
We actually thought of that and we wanted to lure them in with the environment friendly initiative of that and like the benefits that comes with it. Also, we are almost throwing plugs for the free. The basic, our main focus is on the subscription that they will be getting those AI induced action items that they'll get on the plug. So we're not charging them for the plug. I mean, we are getting some money out of the subscription, the one-time setup cost, but the way we will market it as like you're getting the plugs for free. These plugs usually last for 15 to 20 years from our market research, and you're getting subscription, right? Every monthly you're saving money, so you're seeing money every month. I know like break even of three years does sound a bit much, but you're seeing money every month. I know you have one initial setup cost that is offsetting our break-even point to 3 years, but every month you're seeing that you're saving this much on electricity bill and like on the carbon offsetting. So it's kind of a luring point for them to get them to see what our product can do for them.
Any other questions?
How do, you kind of think you used 11 cents flat for the energy savings, especially as things likely move more towards time of use? How does that look? Does it look better on the econs when considering time of use prices? Or I'm not sure if you guys looked into that yet. That might just be something for the future.
This specifically, the savings here is calculated at 10 cents, just because we thought they'd be getting better rates. But I think also with time of use, a lot of these companies, they're not going to be able to shift their demand too much. So the savings, because it's going to be mostly in the middle of the day, there's not going to be a significant change from that.
That's the peak costs, time of use. The cheapest is the middle of the night, 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. So I'm curious, you're focused on smart plugs. Have you thought about other technologies like proximity sensors, cameras, things like that?
Oh, our plugs would include that.
So they include all that technology. Yes. So it's a super smart plug.
Correct.
Don't you think 10% for 250K is you are devaluating your organization?
Sorry.
10% at 250K, since given the value proposition you have, I think it should be 2% or 5%.
Well, it's still the initial risk of the investors, right? So we're trying to make sure that they want to jump on board first. Even though, yeah, you may be right. I mean, chips was a lot more, right? So, yeah.
Okay, I think that's it for the questions, unless there's something online.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
if I may ask a question.
Go ahead.
So if I look at some of those customers on the slide up, a $40,000, $50,000 annual saving might not be compelling enough for this kind of customer names. But how do you kind of tailor your pitch towards the net zero, and how do you quantify the ESG aspect of it, which might be more compelling than a $40,000 or $50,000 annual saving for this?
Yeah, I was searching for the same thing. If you're averaging $4 per person, per employee per year of savings, which is not enough to get anyone's attention. But maybe an ESG angle does? Is that the question?
Yeah, exactly.
Does anyone else want to take it? Or no, I can talk here honestly.
So, I mean, that's true. So, yeah, I mean, it's still a savings. It might not seem a lot, but it's still a significant amount of saving. It's something that people or companies usually overlook. But 80% in reduction, or even like if we see the other table, $700 per month in saving in electricity bills. If you total up to like a year, you like goes to what is it? Yeah, like $7,000, which is actually really good. And this will go in the long run, and in the future there might be more like incentives from the government that we're not aware about, especially in the current conditions where there are a lot of problems in terms of energy production. And when governments are trying to limit the like electrical usage of the companies, these might be actually like their saviors. The fact that they're actually already reducing the electrical usage amount, or the vampire energy amount that they're currently consuming. So yeah, I mean, but we should like, my answer is we should look at the long run, and we will try to convince these companies as much as we can that these are profitable, especially in the long run.
If you can impact productivity of the employee by as little as 1% per year, right? You would probably multiply your savings by 250-fold, because you're talking $4 a year savings. 1% would be $1,000 a year.
So yeah, another cool feature with our product is because we're targeting mostly companies or offices and institutions. We have this productivity monitoring feature in our product, which will also be used for the companies. So it's something that's outside of the electrical usage and consumption, but it's more of the productivity of the employees. So they have like other benefits that is not like constrained to the greenhouse.
That's where the meat is. I mean, if like I said, 1% is going to have a huge impact on productivity and your savings versus the electricity. So maybe it's not very popular to go down this path, because you're really talking about like a little bit of Big Brother, right? Overseeing how people work, monitoring their productivity, and automating all that. But at the same time, that's the music that, you know, big business dances to, right? That's what they want to hear, is productivity.
And another thing is, by eliminating the whole need of human interaction, we don't need any more like employees or like building maintenance people to turn the appliances off, which is also something that companies that consider when want to buy our product.
More productivity. So, okay, thank you very much. Nice job.
Okay.
Point out where I was talking to a hotel operator and talked about LED lights, right? So, you know, the switch over from incandescent LED has been a big deal. And I said, oh, isn't that great? You save money and energy. He said, yeah, it's fine. But the big savings is labor. With 100 hotels, this guy had to manage 100 hotels. He said the amount of labor, right, that we had going in, changing.
Yeah, an incandescent bulb lasts 2 years, LED lasts 10.
Okay.
So you're going to reduce your labor cost, maintenance cost by 80%, right? That's much bigger than the electricity, unless you live in Guam or someplace where electricity is really expensive, right? Kabza, team one.
It's just so hard to get people to pay attention.
Well, maybe when you bolt it onto something like productivity though, right?
Exactly. Yeah,
I think the energy becomes, for the corporation, it's secondary, but for the people in this room, it's primary.
Yeah.
So.
It's really fancy. So we can pace.
Did I pronounce it right? Kabza or Kabza or?
Kabza, yeah.
Kabza? Okay.
Excellent.
You've got 10 minutes. Team one, take it away.
Excellent. Well, hello, everyone. We are Team Kabza. Kabza allows users to offset their personal carbon emissions with one click every time they check out on a purchase, seamlessly bridging the gap between the average American consumer and carbon capture and sequestration companies nationwide. The problem is obvious. Global carbon emissions are spiking, and this is increasing the Earth's surface temperature and causing incomprehensible consequences globally. However, the more specific problem we're targeting is a little bit more detailed. Carbon accounting software that currently exists requires manual consultants, which means it can cost millions of dollars for private companies who want to be able to assess their personal carbon impact. Additionally, analyzed carbon footprints often only include internal company emissions, which aren't helpful for the average American consumer when they're curious about how much the product they're purchasing actually contributes to carbon emissions. Finally, financial support towards carbon sequestration efforts is extremely weak. This is due to a multitude of factors, but one of them being that it's really difficult for private companies to measure exactly how much carbon they're saving when they take steps towards carbon capture or carbon saving initiatives. And yet, with all this being said, 75% of consumers in the US are willing to pay to offset their carbon footprint. And that's why we've created COSA. So meet Mike. Before 10 a.m., he's ordered online some paper towels, his weekly groceries, maybe a new tie. And for all of these purchases, Mike would emit roughly 5 kilograms of CO2. Now imagine if with one click, Mike could offset 100% of the carbon emissions from his purchases. His overall price would increase by just around 5%. And you can see we keep this as simple and streamlined as possible for the user. They simply check a single box, they see exactly how much more they're paying, and they're able to track exactly where their money is going, which carbon sequestration efforts exactly. That's part of our value proposition, is that we give them that direct information and we keep it as streamlined and simple as possible. Now, how does this work on the back end? Roberto, take it away.
Yeah, so how is this exactly gonna work? So starting with the customer, right? The customer directly goes to a retail website or e-commerce website, they buy the product, like Sydney explained, then they get the product. And after getting the product, they also get a report with an information of where, how, and when was that carbon footprint actually sequestrated or where the carbon was captured. And then we have 2 subscription models, which Natalia is going to go more into depth in a bit. But basically, the retail e-commerce will be paying us for a subscription in which they would be sending us that information directly from what product it was. And even before setting up the subscription with them, we're gonna all give each retail and e-commerce company a form in which they're gonna fill out with a bunch of information, and they're gonna give us their suppliers, and we're gonna use that information to analyze the whole supply chain, starting even from manufacturing, from each product, and we're gonna start incorporating it into CAPSA. So once we have that information and we have that fee, that 5% that Stephanie was describing, then we use that money, we give it directly to a carbon capture and sequestration companies. And the carbon capture and sequestration companies receive that payment, and for getting access to that capital, which is gonna be a lot of capital for multiple different products and companies, they pay us a fee, a subscription fee, to have access to that capital, which is what makes CAPSA keep running, etc. And so for doing that, they do the service and they can expand their initiatives on sequestration and carbon capture, etc. And what do we get? We get the information back of when, how, and where, which we give back to the customer directly, but we don't give it back to them. Actually, the retail sends it directly back to them. And with part of the subscription fees, we pay for marketing, which that marketing specifically, we have found that it increases any product's social presence by over 200% once it's proven that it can offset its own carbon emissions, right? So how are we planning to do this? Now, what are the steps? So our roadmap is initially we will develop, and also with the money that we would ask for as an investment, we will initially develop the carbon footprint calculator. So this would be to analyze the whole supply chain, analyze what the manufacturers want, etc. We need to make that platform. We need to make the tool. Then we would start talking to the retailers and e-commerce, etc. And we say to them, okay, fill out these forms, give us your suppliers, etc. And can you go back to the last slide for a second? I just forgot to mention this, which is crucial. What's the retail and e-commerce getting from this, right? So what they're getting is they're sending back their customers the information from CO2, so they look good with the customer. Additionally, their products are getting marketed through us, and they're getting a much more high value presence within the market. So then we'll talk to the retail and e-commerce, we'll explain how everything works, etc. They fill out the forms, we start integrating their different products and start offering them. Then from there, we start setting up the subscription model with the carbon capture sequestration models as the companies, and we start giving them the capital so they can sequestrate and capture even more carbon. And then once we have that complete, the whole infrastructure, we will start allowing customers to offset their personal CO2 emissions, starting with maybe a couple of products, because doing that analysis is very complex from even the manufacturing stage, supply chain, etc. Right now, nowadays, most companies only do, when they hire a consulting company, etc., their analysis of the carbon that's being emitted within their company, not from the supply chain, not from manufacturing, not logistics, not shipping, etc. Now, Dala will explain the market.
Okay, you guys hear me? So we looked into the market, we evaluated our total addressable market, which turned out to be $7 billion. At first, we looked into the entire transactions that happened in retail and e-commerce. That turned out to be 5.3 trillion. That was a massive number to address. So we focused our efforts on high carbon footprint emitting products. That's around $7 billion. And then we zoomed into SaaS companies, as we're providing our solution as a SaaS solution. And that's about $2 billion. And then we zoomed into SaaS solutions that tackle carbon emissions, carbon offsetting initiatives, and that's around $20 million. So that's our SOM. So the business model or our revenue streams look like this. We have two different revenue streams. Both will be subscription based. The first one is we identify our customer as e-commerce and retail stores. And these customers will pay an annual subscription fee of $1,000, $1,000 to $10,000, depending on the number of products that they want us to evaluate using our footprint calculator. And the next subscription fee is an annual subscription that is paid by the carbon capture and storage agencies. We've identified 18 agencies that want to tap into that capital that we have helped e-commerce and retail stores to collect through the consumers. So in order to maintain that service and have these 18 agencies have access to that capital, they'll pay us a subscription fee around $100,000. We analyzed the current players in the market. The competitors have relatively good revenue streams, but they lack in that footprint report that you provide to the consumer as far as how they are contributing to the carbon capture mission. And some actually do have current carbon footprint calculators. We believe that they're all missing the CCS integration to close that loop, where we connect the final consumer or the end consumer to the agencies that actually work on carbon capture and sequestration. So our ask is $2.3 million for a 20% stake in Kabza. This $2.3 million will help us in the first 2.5 years to build the company up with the operations needed, building our database systems, staffing our company. And then once we have that fund and we are up and running with 100 customers or more within the first 2 years, we'll see the consistent growth trajectory as can be seen on the slide. We project a net return of 4.6 million in 10 years for our investors. And we expect so it's a double return on the investment within 10 years.
So as for our next steps beyond the roadmap that we outlined, the possibilities for Kabza are endless. Just some of the ideas that we generated ourselves were creating a data intelligence agency with all the data we're going to be putting together to create these carbon calculators, launching a carbon social media platform, or an ability to really easily share the carbon emissions that you're saving on your online purchases, offering a credit card through Kabza that automatically offsets all of the carbon emissions that you purchase through that credit card, and partnering with manufacturing companies. So allowing companies to understand which suppliers are emitting how much carbon and how they can best partner with suppliers as to choose the lowest carbon emitting option. And this is our team. We are 6 Northwestern students. Between the 6 of us, we're from 4 countries. We speak 11 languages. which is how the name Kabza originated. We actually just translated capture into all 11 of the languages we speak and chose the most catchy one. We are majoring in everything from masters in engineering management to material science to political science here at Northwestern. And we've really come together over the past few weeks to put together this project. So we're really proud of our company and we hope you enjoy.
All right, thank you. All right, any questions from the advisors? Chuck, do you have a question or?
Yeah, well, I do. Am I interrupted?
Oh.
Okay, so I have two questions. One is around comparable products. So I know you had mentioned some startups which were up there that look like what you're proposing to do to a certain extent. But why can't a customer that's really interested in this go the direction of perhaps simpler alternatives, just buy offsets themselves? I think you had mentioned the Kabza credit card, which was a cool idea. I know over the last like 3 months, I've been hit over the head with a credit card. I can't remember what it's called. Has anybody gotten this? There's like a credit card that plants trees for every $1 you spend. Aspirations. Thank you. That's what I'm looking for. So what are the other options that a consumer that's interested in something like this might otherwise pursue right now that's not one of these startups? And why is your option unique with it?
Absolutely. So our first unique advantage is that we are able to calculate the exact carbon emissions on each individual product that you're purchasing. So a lot of these other companies use very generalized data to make an estimation about your personal carbon emissions, but even these carbon calculators are very, very broad. And so if you as a person just want to be offsetting your personal emissions and understand exactly why those emissions, like the breakdown of those emissions, that's where we come in. So we have that unique data set, we have that unique advantage. Additionally, part of Kabza is creating the ecosystem. So we are not only, allowing you to check a box, but we're creating we're streamlining the whole system for you. So you don't have to, think about, oh wait, so I purchased XYZ on Amazon and I purchased XYZ on Google, and I had all these purchases that I was making. You can check a box every single time. We're going to send you all the information that you need to know, and that's it. So purchasing offsets is kind of it's a separate extra few steps, especially when you consider that you kind of have to do all the mental math in your head. So Kabza is connecting all of the e-commerce, all of the retailers, all the carbon capture and sequestration companies, and we're streamlining that process so that it's as simple and user-friendly as possible. Because like we said, 75% of consumers are willing to pay extra to offset their personal emissions. They just don't do that because the cost of having to put in all the manual effort is too high.
So the second question is, all of this hinges on your ability to get accurate data from a supplier. So prove to me that me supplier who has value in the privacy of my supply chain, right? That may not want to hand you data to say, look at the carbon intensity of this product that you're about to buy from me. Why would I want to put all of that information, out into the public potentially, so that a competitor could potentially say, this equal product that we offer has a lower carbon footprint than you, and why should I even want to advertise the carbon footprint of something that I'm selling?
Yeah, so right now, as you may know, mostly like the people that have power in the market are the retailers, right? Because everyone's trying to put their product into the into retail or into Amazon, so they control it. Right. And so those are the people that, in essence, we have to make happy, right? How are we making them happy? We're making their products much more, 200% more engaging, just because they're offsetting the carbon capture. And additional to that, they as a company can say, and we're giving them the credit that they as a company, as an Amazon, as a Walmart, can say, you know what? We have offsetted this many tons of carbon by offering that check mark in our websites, and we are a carbon-friendly company and partnering with Kabza, right? But they're getting the credit, so they're gonna sell more by that 200% more engagement, and additional, they'll look better as well. And who's gonna look better? The Walmart, the retailers, e-commerce, and the suppliers. At the end, they have to respond to them. So if if the retailers ask the suppliers, they're gonna have to do it because they don't want to lose shelf space. And at the end of the day, we're not gonna be, when we tell them how much carbon is emitted in the report, we're not gonna be specific saying, oh yeah, that supplier is emitting that much. That's information we have that we actually wanna use afterwards. In when do we create our data intelligence agency, we wanna use that information to go and say to a car manufacturer, you know, use this steel company instead of this steel company because this steel company uses less carbon to actually manufacture their steel throughout the supply chain, right? So we're gonna be offering that in the intelligence agency. So at the end of the day, you know, everyone's benefiting, both the retail, the supplier, no one knows. We're just gonna use that data when needed, you know, and if paid for by other third parties, right?
I think it also fundamentally comes down to data protection systems. So we intend to do this process with thousands and thousands of customers over the next 10 years. And so through that, we are truly going to have an impeccably streamlined process in order to ensure that for all of those customers, their information is absolutely protected. In previous iterations, we've talked about how we're exploring how we can best take advantage of blockchain to not only back up each individual transaction that we are offsetting the carbon for, but also protecting all of our intellectual property and data. And so that's kind of another option that we're exploring, just to ensure that all of these stakeholders that we're working with are absolutely confident and trust HubSpot in every step of the process.
Congratulations on keeping blockchain out of your presentation and then bringing it up in a way where it actually makes sense for your answer. So congratulations on that.
So how do I know when I buy my tie and your data tells me it's a ton of carbon in the supply chain footprint, that I'm actually offsetting carbon?
Yeah, I mean, at the end,
to a physical offset, and how are you doing that? And what does your research show you on the ability of carbon sequesters to actually sequester anywhere near the amount of carbon that's in the supply chain?
So actually, Abdallah has over 10 years of work experience in Aramco, and after talking to his colleagues in Aramco, we found out that approximately to sequester 1 ton of carbon, it takes up approximately $32 with like searches.
Which is confidential data.
Sorry, I said that, but so we would essentially
blockchain.
Yeah. So we would essentially be giving like this money towards sequestering like more tons of carbon through those companies, etc. And we would be sending a report, right? Where it happened, with what company specifically, was it captured carbon or was it sequestered carbon, right? And then we'd be like receiving it through blockchain.
There has to be a match of some sort, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, that's part of what makes our company idea fun, is that as a user, you would be able to see like exactly which carbon sequestration company your specific purchases are going to, and it might be different every time. And for our first few years, we might only have one carbon sequestration plan, but that's something that you can share online. If we go forward with this social media platform idea, that's something that you can personally track. So it would be really cool to see your global impact that way.
You know, we believe that the 18 companies that are currently sequestering or capturing carbon, excluding the oil and gas, which are averaging around 500 million tons sequestration, will be able to help us with that effort for the first few years. We believe that once we establish the ecosystem for it, that we could aspire these companies to expand on that operation, where the offset would be in equilibrium. Whatever they sequester would be paid for by the consumers as the market grows.
And do you depend on direct air capture then for that? Or is that too?
No, it's probably going, for the time being, we're looking into oil and gas solutions where CO2 is compressed into liquid stage and then sequestered underground or subsea.
Too expensive to capture as of now. You know, like maybe in the future.
Well, but I'll stop. Could there be a consumer option where I get to pick my project and maybe I'm willing to pay $6 for a transaction because it plants trees rather than $5 because it contains supercritical CO2 and pumps it underground.
We're actually, like, that's part of the social media platform, right? Like, that would be our next step. Like, once you have received your first report, we would be offering you to join the social media platform. And by joining the social media platform, you could have the option to say, oh, you know what, like, I prefer supporting specifically this type. I want to support my sequestration in this country, or I want to do capture, you know, even though I might not affect with that many tons of carbon. I prefer to do capture, right? I would prefer to remove it, and yeah.
So if I had a dozen ties laid out here from different countries, different materials, different sizes, different styles, how can you tell the difference in terms of the CO2 content or the carbon content of the different ties?
Well, at first, that's where we scale up. So the first year, we're going to work with 10, 100 stores and retailers, where we sit with the store themselves and analyze the product, get the data for the product specifically that they worked on, and then contact from their suppliers. We work with the suppliers to evaluate the whole supply chain and the material they use, the energy consumption, and we calculate based on that product how much carbon footprint.
Fundamentally, you're pushing the burden down to the suppliers to figure it out.
Well, it's upstream scope 3 emissions for the supplier, right? Sort of.
Yeah. I mean, not if we do work with the suppliers, and it's not going to be pushed down to them. It's on us to figure out that.
We're just gonna be asking them, as I said, we're gonna be giving them a form, you know?
Yeah.
Please fill up this specific form, generic.
The information is coming from them.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, it has to, because they know where it came from,
Yeah.
what materials were used, what energy was used, all that stuff.
Yes.
And
What happens?
Yeah.
Sorry, what happens when I'm buying like a COVID mask and my supplier changes 18 times in 12 days, right? Because there's a run on a product. How do you keep up with
I think the
just
nice
in
thing is
time?
that all of this is automated, all of this is online. And so because our processes are going to be online and automated, we can just have, you know, the computers talking to each other, right? So that data is really interchangeable.
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a SaaS, you know? So like, initially, like the first 100 products, it's gonna be a bit tougher, right? We're gonna have to like adapt to each different supply chain and analyze how they actually did the carbon capture. But then as we start progressing, you know, our code will become stronger, it will become more efficient, you know, and at the end of the day, when we get to masks, you know, we're starting with the most, the products like me that produce the most carbon. When we get to masks, I'm sure that it'll be a very efficient code and it'll be able to change itself, you know, like it's not.
On top of that, we'll always start slow with retail stores and e-commerce stores that we can actually work with their products. And as we scale, I mean, even Amazon is a beast. They have millions of products. Quantifying their carbon footprint is going to require an army. So we start small with small retailers that require their footprint to be calculated, and then we scale up as our operations grow.
All right, let's hear it for this team. Nice job, well done. All right, we finished exactly on time, so I want to thank again all the advisors, all the students. I thought you guys all did a great job. Let's give all the teams one last round of applause. Thanks to Ryan, our guest speaker tonight. Thanks to all the folks online. I really appreciate you hanging in with us. We still have some extra food. Unfortunately, we're out of plates. So if anyone knows how this building works, are there plates anywhere in the building? No, none, right? Okay, even the EDI folks, is there anyone from EDI? There's got to be a stash of plates somewhere. But otherwise, thank you all for coming. Next year, we're going to have a very similar class, so I look forward to working with the advisors. And of course, with Jeff, thank you, Jeff and Ison for sponsoring the whole class. So well done, right? Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck to everyone.
All right, good luck, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Anne Marie.
Thanks, Mark. I'll talk to you soon.
Yep, it was great seeing you again, at least on the screen.
Yeah. I got you.